Chapter 1009. As soon as he said that, he saw Lu Ye's mountain plate saber dripping with blood. You killed him. This was truly strange. A mere blood meal actually had the guts to kill a saint. He had lived for so many years, but he had never seen such a thing before. However, he had sensed Lu Ye's spiritual power fluctuations just now. He was only a human cultivator at the spirit stream realm. He should have been a villager from a nearby village. How could he have killed a member of the holy race with such a cultivation base? That Saint clan member was at the Cloud River tier, after all. Just as he was feeling a little bewildered, he suddenly frowned and stared at Lu Yi. What are you eating? Lu Yi gazed at him as she chewed. This sound was oddly familiar to the vampire. He had also eaten blood crystals from his own race. What made him even more horrified was that the two blood feasts were not frightened at all when they saw him. Instead, they were eager to try. The Blood Clan member finally realized that something was wrong. He turned around and was about to escape, but the next moment, he felt a pain in his head. It was as if someone had hit his head with an invisible sledgehammer. He couldn't help but stagger a few steps and fall to the ground. When he came back to his senses, there were already two figures in front of him, looking down at him from above, one on the left and one on the right, expressionlessly. How dare you? The vampire was furious. He was a noble saint race, so when had he ever been looked at so disdainfully by a blood food? He immediately felt humiliated. Dao 13 slapped him on the shoulder, and the blood race youth felt as if his entire body was about to fall apart. He finally panicked when he felt the irresistible force on his shoulder, but he still tried to put on a brave front and yelled, "Let go of me. If you dare disrespect me, you're all dead." Lu Yi scrutinized the stubborn vampire, wondering whether to kill him and take his blood crystal or use soul manipulation to enslave him. The blood crystal was indeed very useful to him. At this moment, he could clearly feel that the shackling force in his body was rapidly dissipating. In this short period of time, his cultivation had been restored to the 7th Order Spirit Stream realm, and it was still continuing to recover. If he could obtain another blood crystal, it would be easy for him to recover his Cloud River tier cultivation base. But if he really did that, it would be a one-time deal. It was undoubtedly better to enslave the blood race. He could use this blood race to search for more traces of the blood race and obtain more blood crystals. At this point, Lu Yi made a decision. He raised his hand and pointed at the vampire. The blood breed was still struggling, but after being slapped by the impatient Dao 13, he immediately became obedient. Lu Yi tapped a finger on the blood tribe cultivator's forehead and activated his divine sense. He could feel the blood tribe cultivator's resistance. However, this blood tribe cultivator was only at the Cloud River tier, so his divine sense was naturally not as powerful as Lu Ye's. A few days ago, Lu Yi couldn't enslave Dao Shursan because Dao Shursan's spirit was stronger than his. He had no choice but to use the deity vanquishing sword to break Dao Shursan's spirit defense. Against a blood tribe member at the Cloud River tier, there was no need to go through so much trouble. As the soul manipulation divine sigil was branded, the blood tribe's resistance became weaker and weaker until it completely stopped. Lu Yi retracted his hand and sensed the connection between him and the vampire in front of him. He knew that the divine pattern had been completed. Actually, if it wasn't for the fact that the difference in size between humans and the Blood Clan was too obvious, he wouldn't have had to go through so much trouble. He could have turned into a Blood Clan member by activating the spirit tattoos on his face. However, the difference in size was too obvious and the blood tribe's skin was red, so there was no way to disguise it. The blood tribe cultivator stood up and looked at Lu Yi, his expression full of caution and respect. The soul manipulation divine sigil only enslaved the other party's mind, but it didn't affect the other party's mind. At this moment, in the blood tribe cultivator's heart, Lu Yi was sacred and inviolable. However, he didn't know how to address Lu Yi, so he couldn't help but feel a little helpless. "What's your name?" Lu Yi asked. "Zhang Zhilai," the blood tribe cultivator replied honestly. Lu Yi frowned. "Why do you blood tribe cultivators all use human names?" The blood tribe cultivator he had killed before also had a human name. Lu Yi hadn't paid much attention to it at the time, thinking that it was just a coincidence. However, now it seemed that wasn't the case. Zhang Zhilai replied, "Human names are pleasant and easy to remember. In ancient times, the holy race used another kind of name. However, that kind of name was difficult to pronounce and difficult to understand, so it was gradually abandoned. The current rule of the holy race is that after killing the first human, we take their name for ourselves." Lu Yi thought for a moment and realized that there was indeed such a rule in the information he had obtained from the Dead Blood tribe cultivator. However, because the information he had obtained was too large and complicated, it was difficult for him to digest it all in a short period of time, so he hadn't noticed it. The Blood tribe cultivator in front of him was called Zhang Zhilai. In other words, there was once a human with this name. Then, if a human's name was Gooden or something like that, Lu Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. Zhang Zhilai said, "There are indeed people with this kind of name in the holy race. However, if you don't like it, you can completely abandon it and take it again." It was just a matter of killing a few more humans. For the Blood tribe, it really wasn't a troublesome matter. It was precisely because of this rule that the Blood tribe cultivators had all kinds of strange names. Often, the Blood tribe cultivators born in the same place would not have the same surname. It was extremely strange. "Take me to your cave residence," Lu Yi urged. Unlike the 9 provinces where sects stood in great numbers, the Blood tribe didn't have sects because of their simple cultivation. They knew how to cultivate from the moment they were born. It could be said that the cultivation method was branded in the depths of their blood. As long as they followed the prescribed order and had enough resources, they could continuously obtain great power. In this regard, the Blood tribe was much stronger than the human race. 100%, if the human race wanted to cultivate, they must first have the aptitude for cultivation. Even if they had the aptitude, it would be difficult for them to go far if they weren't good enough. However, almost all of the Blood tribe cultivators could be said to be cultivators. They could improve their cultivation by refining the essence of blood. They could also improve their cultivation by hunting their own kind for blood crystals. The latter, in particular, was very helpful to the Blood tribe. Therefore, there was no need for sects at all, let alone teachers to teach them. They basically gathered around their cave residence. The number of Blood tribe cultivators gathered in a cave residence and the strength of their cultivation determined the size of the cave residence. The various cave residences frequently fought and attacked each other constantly. They were not only seizing each other's blood crystals, but they were also seizing the humans under each other's jurisdiction. To the Blood tribe, the human race was not only livestock in captivity, but also a cultivation resource. They were also a hotbed for breeding their own kind. Zhang Zhilai and the Blood tribe member killed by Lu Yi belonged to 2 different cave residences. They had long had a grudge against each other. This village was under the jurisdiction of Zhang Zhilai's cave residence. Logically speaking, the humans here were the property of Zhang Zhilai's cave residence. That Blood tribe member came over for no reason, so Zhang Zhilai naturally couldn't tolerate him and fought him. Zhang Zhilai came out on top in the battle. The Blood tribe member was driven away and came to the village to hunt for blood to replenish himself. In the end, he was killed by Lu Yi and Dao Shisan. Due to the internal strife, the Blood tribe suffered huge casualties every year. However, the dead Blood tribe members would become nutrients for the growth of the other Blood tribe members. Moreover, the Blood tribe members were easy to breed and cultivate. Therefore, the total number of Blood tribe members in the blood refinement realm didn't decrease and could be constantly replenished. With the soul manipulation divine rune, Zhang Zhilai naturally wouldn't disobey Lu Ye's orders. He immediately led him into the depths of the mountain. As the sky gradually brightened, the villagers of Songnan village began to go out. However, Lu Yi and Dao Shisan were nowhere to be seen. In addition, a woman was missing from a family in the village. The villagers had long been accustomed to this, and were only slightly sad. Those who were supposed to work in the fields went to work, and those who were supposed to hunt in the mountains went hunting. On the other side, Zhang Zhilai urged the bloody light to wrap around Lu Yi and Dao Shisan and bring them to the depths of the mountain. On a rock wall, there was a huge cave entrance that looked like the mouth of a ferocious beast. Bright Moon Cave. This was the cave mansion where Zhang Zhilai lived. Along the way, Lu Yi asked Zhang Zhilai a lot of questions and learned that there were more than 10 Blood Tribe members gathered in Bright Moon Cave. Most of them were at the Cloud River realm, but there were also a few at the Spirit Stream realm. The owner of the cave mansion was a female Blood Tribe member named Sun Miaozhu. She was at the Cloud River realm 9th Order and could be considered the strongest in Bright Moon Cave. This 100-kilometer radius could be considered the territory of Bright Moon Cave. There were 4 or 5 villages like Songnan Village under its jurisdiction. The cave entrance was guarded by Blood Tribe members. When they saw Zhang Zhilai's escape light from afar, they warned loudly, "Who are you?" Zhang Zhilai replied, "It's me." As he spoke, he had already landed at the cave entrance. When the Blood Tribe member saw Zhang Zhilai, he grinned. "So it's Brother Zhang." Then, he saw Lu Yi and Dao Shirsen beside him and couldn't help but be puzzled. "Brother Zhang, these 2 Blood Tribe members are my new blood slaves." Zhang Zhilai replied casually. The Blood Tribe could activate a special kind of blood seal and brand it into the body of a human cultivator. Its function was similar to soul control, but its control was not as absolute. Back in the Soaring Dragon Realm's sealed world, Lu Yi had heard of the term blood slaves. On the way here, he had also discussed with Zhang Zhilai how to deal with them. The Blood Tribe member glanced at Dao Shirsan with some envy. "Brother Zhang, you have good eyes. This Blood Tribe member is full of vitality and is very good. If he is nurtured well, he may become a great talent in the future." Then, he looked at Lu Yi and shook his head. "This one is much worse." Lu Yi had lived for so long, but this was the first time someone had looked down on him so much. However, he was now Zhang Zhilai's blood slave, so naturally, he didn't have much of a reaction. He just stood behind Zhang Zhilai respectfully. "Has anything happened in the cave recently?" Zhang Zhilai asked. The Blood Tribe member shook his head. "What can happen? It's still the same." Zhang Zhilai nodded slightly and led Lu Yi and Dao Shirsan into the cave. The passage inside the cave was spacious, dry, and not damp. There were oil lamps on both sides of the passage, so it wasn't dark. After walking for a while, many cave dwellings appeared on both sides of the passage. The first few cave dwellings were empty and didn't look like they were inhabited. However, not long after, Lu Yi found a figure in one of the cave dwellings. He glanced at it casually and didn't pay it much attention at first. However, he soon stopped and frowned. Chapter 10:10. Lu Yi discovered that the one living in the cave wasn't a vampire, but a human. Moreover, it was a woman with extraordinary looks. She looked a little weak and pale, but what caught Lu Yi's attention wasn't her complexion but her belly. This woman had a big belly. She was obviously pregnant. The woman panicked when she met Lu Yi's gaze and hurriedly shrank to the side. Lu Yi frowned and didn't want to investigate further for now. However, he soon discovered that something wasn't quite right. There were many pregnant women living in the caves. Along the way, he saw at least 7 or 8 of them. There were also some who weren't pregnant, but they all hid in their caves and didn't dare to show their faces. Without exception, all of these women were quite beautiful. Lu Yi had some guesses, and his heart was heavy. Bright Moon Cave didn't only have these human women. There were also some men, but there weren't many of them. They were all captured by the vampires to serve them. These humans weren't even blood slaves. If the vampires were injured or in the mood, they could capture them and drink their blood at will. The deeper they went, the more accessible the passageways became. Zhang Zhilai was quite familiar with the place and led Lu Yi and Dao Shirsan in a certain direction. Soon, they arrived at his residence. This place was undoubtedly much more spacious than the places where the pregnant women lived outside. The environment was also better. There was a door blocking the entrance and a restriction covering it. Zhang Zhilai's tense expression finally relaxed when they arrived here. He bowed to Lu Yi and said, "My lord, this is where I live and cultivate." He didn't know how to address Lu Yi. He originally wanted to call Lu Yi master, but Lu Yi didn't like this title and could only call him lord. Lu Yi sat down and asked with a sullen expression, "What's with the pregnant women outside?" Zhang Zhilai replied, They were all brought back from the nearby villages for the pleasure of our clansmen. In addition, they are also pregnant. Lu Yi was currently searching through the dead vampire's memories and found that it was indeed as Zhang Zhulai had said. It was also as he had previously thought. These women were all captured for the pleasure of the vampires. Although the vampires were generally taller than humans, their body structure was almost the same. Moreover, the vampires' aesthetics seemed to be more inclined toward humans. Human beauties were also beauties in their eyes. As a result, the males of the blood race preferred human females and didn't have much interest in females of the same race. While indulging in pleasure and lust, it was inevitable that some human women would get pregnant. Perhaps it was due to the vampires' powerful bloodlines, but the children of the two races were all vampires without exception. Thus, the vampires had always treated the human race as a breeding ground for their brethren. This was also the reason why there were so many humans living under the vampires' rule. To the blood race, humans weren't just treasures. They were also important to the continuation of their race. It could be said that 90% of the blood race in the blood refinement realm were born from humans. Once these babies were born, they would be sent to a special place to be nurtured. This was also the reason why the blood breeds in the blood refinement realm did not rely on clans to survive. They did not have any clans at all. Most of the blood breeds did not even know who their parents were, so how could they survive as clans? Zhang Zhulai had gone out earlier because a woman in Bright Moon Cave had given birth to a vampire fetus, and he was in charge of sending the fetus out. Lu Yi clenched and unclenched his fists as he listened to Zhang Zhulai's words and searched through the dead vampire's memories. Zhang Zhulai didn't even dare to breathe loudly, as though he could sense Lu Yi's mood. The room was silent. Only Dao Shi-san was looking left and right foolishly. Knock, knock, knock. The sound of knocking was extremely abrupt in the silent atmosphere. Startled, Zhang Zhulai hurriedly looked at Lu Yi. Lu Yi tilted his head. Zhang Zhulai opened the door, and a blood tribe member stood outside. He looked very young, and his cultivation base was probably not very high. He was probably one of the Spirit Stream Realm blood tribe members. He placed his hand on his chest and bowed to Zhang Zhulai, then said, "The cave master requests your presence." Zhang Zhulai nodded. "I'll go right away." The vampire looked past Zhang Zhulai and looked inside before adding, "Cave master heard that you've taken in 2 new blood thralls. He wants you to bring them along as well." A trace of darkness flashed through Zhang Zhulai's eyes as he responded with a gloomy voice. Only then did the vampire leave. Zhang Zhulai closed the door and looked at Lu Yi. "My lord, that woman probably doesn't have good intentions." He glanced at Dao Shi-san as though he wanted to say something. "What do you mean?" Lu Yi asked. Zhang Zhulai was a bit embarrassed. "She probably likes this one." In terms of aesthetics, vampire males preferred human females. However, vampire females were different. Most vampire females were willing to mate with males of their own race. Of course, there were exceptions. Bright Moon Abode's cave lord, Sun Miaozhu, was one such vampire. All year round, she had abducted strong human males from different villages. Normally, she would use them to relieve her loneliness, and when she was no longer able to use them, she would turn those human males into blood food to improve her cultivation. In any case, to her, humans were just livestock, and no one dared to resist her. Dao Shi-san's robust physique and vigorous blood energy naturally attracted Sun Miaozhu's interest. It was unknown which vampire had reported Dao Shi-san's existence to Sun Miaozhu as soon as they returned. Zhang Zhulai wasn't surprised by this, but as Lu Yi's sole slave, he had to consider her feelings in all aspects. Moreover, he could see that Lu Yi hadn't followed him to Bright Moon Abode to sightsee. She had something important to do. As for what it was, Zhang Zhulai wasn't an idiot. He could guess. He was a bit nervous and perturbed. Lu Yi turned to Dao Shi-san and chuckled. "Since you like her, let's go meet her." Zhang Zhulai immediately led the way. The group walked into the depths of the abode and stopped only when they reached a spacious hall. Faint sounds of debauchery could be heard. Lu Yi looked up and saw a vampire woman lying on a large stone bed. Her overly slender figure swayed in the dim light. There were also two strong human youths on the bed. One was kneeling at her feet and massaging her legs, while the other was kneeling behind her and massaging her shoulders. Both the vampire women and the human men were wearing pitifully little clothes. It was truly an eyesore. This vampire woman was clearly the abode master of Bright Moon Abode, Sun Miaozhu. Zhang Zhulai led Lu Yi and Dao Shursan forward and greeted her with vampire etiquette. Abode master. Sun Miaozhu ignored him and looked at Dao Shursan, who was beside him. A smile appeared on her face. She raised her hand and beckoned Dao Shursan over. Come here. Dao Shursan didn't move. It wasn't until Lu Yi kicked him that he reluctantly walked over and stood beside the bed. Sun Miaozhu looked at Dao Shursan from head to toe with interest. She waved her hand and the two human youths serving her immediately retreated to the side. Sun Miaozhu stood up slowly and stood in front of Dao Shursan. Dao Shursan was a body cultivator, but he wasn't tall. Compared to Sun Miaozhu, Dao Shursan's height only reached her chest. She reached out and gently stroked Dao Shursan's sturdy chest. Her breathing suddenly quickened as she pinched Dao Shursan's chin and tilted his head up. After a while, Sun Miaozhu giggled. Zhang Zhulai, you did a good job keeping this blood slave. He's mine from now on. Zhang Zhulai said respectfully, since Abode Master has spoken, there's naturally no problem. You guys can leave. Sun Miaozhu waved her hand and didn't look at Lu Yi at all. Lu Yi turned around and left. Zhang Zhulai hurriedly followed. Once outside, Lu Yi closed the door and stood there quietly. Then, Sun Miaozhu cried out, What are you doing? Let go. Another muffled groan was heard, followed by a series of bangs. It sounded like something heavy had fallen to the ground. Sun Miaozhu's shrill cry rang out. There was a surge of spiritual energy in her voice, but it was quickly extinguished. Lu Yi waited in silence for a moment until the commotion inside had completely subsided. Then, she pushed the door open and walked in. Zhang Zhulai hurriedly followed. He looked up and his pupils shrank. Beside the stone bed, Dao 13 stood quietly. A slender figure was lying on the ground. Who else could it be but Sun Miaozhu? However, the Blood Clan woman who was smiling like a flower just a moment ago was now a pile of rotten flesh. No one knew what Dao 13 did to her. Sun Miaozhu's body was split into several pieces. *Anson 3 There were obvious dents everywhere. Looking at the shape of the dents, it was probably caused by a fist. Blood flowed around the stone bed. On the stone bed, the two young men of the human clan were curled up and shivering. It was because in that short moment just now, they had seen a scene that they found hard to believe. Zhang Zhulai couldn't help but swallow his saliva. He always knew that Lu Yi and Dao 13's strength couldn't be judged from their spiritual energy waves. However, he had no idea how strong Lu Yi and Dao 13 really were. Until now, Bright Moon Cave's strongest person, Sun Miaozhu, was killed by Dao 13 in such a short time. Moreover, Dao 13 looked as if he had just killed a cat or a dog. He didn't even blush. Even a true lake stage cultivator wouldn't be able to do this. Seeing Lu Yi reappear, Dao 13's expression was somewhat bitter. He seemed to be blaming Lu Yi for abandoning him. However, he still bent down and dug out Sun Miaozhu's blood crystal from her chest. He wiped it on his clothes casually and handed it to Lu Yi. He knew that this thing was very useful to Lu Yi. The sound of something breaking through the air came from all directions. Clearly, the other Blood Clan members in Bright Moon Cave were alerted by Sun Miaozhu's scream and came to investigate the situation. Chapter 10-11. My lord. Zhang Zhulai turned to Lu Yi, seeking his opinion. Lu Yi pondered for a moment before saying, From now on, you will be in charge of Bright Moon Cave. According to his original plan, he was going to slaughter all the blood breeds here. However, he hadn't expected that there would be some captured human women here, and they were all pregnant. Killing all the vampires here wouldn't be difficult, but what about the women? Leaving them here wasn't a good idea. If they were sent to a nearby village, they wouldn't have to worry for a while. However, once they gave birth to a vampire baby, the the situation would only worsen. They needed a place where they could live peacefully, and Bright Moon Cave was their only choice. Thus, they could only maintain Bright Moon Cave's current state for now. Once they gave birth to a vampire baby, they could be resettled elsewhere. Zhang Zhilai was overjoyed. He turned around, bent down, and cut off Sun Miaozhu's head. He held it in his hand and walked out of the door. A group of vampires rushed over from various places. When they saw the head in his hand, they were all shocked. A vampire shouted, "Zhang Zhilai, you killed the cave master. How dare you?" Zhang Zhilai snorted and threw Sun Miaozhu's head away. "From now on, I'll be the cave master of Bright Moon Cave. Who's in favor?" The blood-stained head rolled on the ground and stopped in front of the vampire who had shouted. He took a step forward and said with a cold expression, "I'm afraid you don't have the qualifications to be the cave master." Sun Miaozhu was undoubtedly the strongest in Bright Moon Cave, followed by the vampire who had shouted. After that, it was Zhang Zhilai and another vampire whose cultivation was comparable to his. Sun Miaozhu was dead. No matter how Zhang Zhilai had killed her, according to the rules of the vampires, only the strongest had the qualifications to succeed the cave master position. This vampire was naturally unwilling to accept this. "Then I'll let you see if I have the qualifications." In the past, Zhang Zhilai naturally wouldn't fight for the cave master position. He knew his own limits, but now that Lu Yi had spoken, how could he dare to disobey? Moreover, with Lu Yi and Dao Shisan behind him, he had no one to fear in Bright Moon Cave. "Dao Shisan!" Zhang Zhilai shouted. Lu Yi immediately signaled Dao Shisan with his eyes. Dao Shisan strode out from behind Zhang Zhilai and headed straight for the Blood Clan member who had spoken. Spiritual energy surged around his body. The Blood Race cultivator couldn't help but laugh. A mere spirit stream realm blood thrall dares to act so rashly? As he spoke, he rushed forward and grabbed Dao Shisan's head. His sharp nails dug into Dao Shisan's head, and his blood chi and spirit energy surged. The Blood Race cultivator's expression suddenly changed. The expected scene of him crushing the blood thrall's head didn't happen. He felt as if he wasn't grabbing a head, but an indestructible piece of metal. "What's the matter?" Just as a puzzled expression appeared on his face, a fist rapidly enlarged in his field of vision. With a loud boom, a shockwave visible to the naked eye rushed out, and blood splashed everywhere. With a single punch, the head of this Blood Race 8th Order Cloud River Realm cultivator was blown apart. Blood gushed out from his neck. This shocking scene caused the faces of all the Blood Race cultivators present to change drastically. They all looked at Dao Shisan in horror. They finally understood where Zhang Zhilai got the ability to kill their cave master and where he got the confidence to succeed the position of cave master. They originally thought that he had only taken in a slightly stronger blood thrall. Who knew that this blood thrall would have such terrifying brute strength? The headless corpse swayed and fell to the ground with a thump. This sound was like a sledgehammer pounding on the hearts of all the Blood Race cultivators. They suddenly came back to their senses and looked at Zhang Zhilai with a different gaze. Some of them were afraid, but most of them were envious. "Who else thinks that I'm not qualified to succeed the position of cave master?" Zhang Zhilai glanced at them coldly. The crowd of Blood Race cultivators looked at each other and knelt down on one knee. They placed their hands on their chests and shouted in unison, "Greetings, cave master." Zhang Zhilai couldn't help but straighten his back as a sense of pride welled up in him. He never thought that he would succeed the position of cave master one day. Of course, he didn't forget that it was all because of Lu Yi. Although Dao Shisan was the one who attacked, Dao Shisan was also following Lu Ye's orders. The Blood Race's internal conflicts were frequent and serious. Of course, Blood Race cultivators gathered in the same cave abode wouldn't fight each other. They also knew the principle of working together to keep each other warm. However, there were always some exceptions. Usurping power within the same cave abode was something that could happen occasionally. This was also the reason why the Blood Race cultivators could accept Zhang Zhilai so quickly. Now that he had such a powerful blood thrall, he naturally had the qualifications to become cave master. If it were him, It would be difficult for any other blood race cultivator to accept the position. Leave and do what you need to do. I'll call you if I need you. Zhang Zhilai waved his hand. The blood race cultivators didn't dare to have any objections and returned to where they came from. After the blood race cultivators left, Zhang Zhilai walked forward and took out the blood crystal of the blood race cultivator that Dao Shi-san had killed. He held it with both hands and respectfully handed it to Lu Yi. Lu Yi nodded slightly and said, "Find a clean place for me." Zhang Zhilai immediately led the way. After a short while, they arrived at a relatively spacious cave abode. Lu Yi casually set up some simple restrictions and sat down cross-legged. He took out some clean water and washed the 2 blood crystals. Then, he chose Sun Miaozhu's blood crystal and threw it into his mouth. His cultivation had already recovered to the 7th level of heaven. The benefits of eating the blood crystals were much greater than when he went into the mountains to hunt and eat the flesh of the beasts on the ground. He could clearly feel the power of confinement in his body dissipating. This blood crystal should be enough to recover his cultivation to the Cloud River stage. Crunch, crunch, crunch. As Lu Yi chewed, he waved at Dao Shi-san, who was standing beside him. Dao Shi-san sat beside him. Lu Yi passed the other blood crystal to him and said, "Try it." After being sent to this world by the 9 prefectures Tianji, Dao Shi-san's greatest and only helper was undoubtedly him. He needed to recover his cultivation as soon as possible, and Dao Shi-san needed to do the same. However, Lu Yi wasn't sure if Dao Shi-san could absorb the energy in the blood crystal. Although this thing could quickly dissolve the power of imprisonment, there were many impurities in it. At this moment, there was a large amount of gray smoke rising from the talent tree. Clearly, the talent tree was burning the impurities. Dao Shi-san didn't have a talent tree, so he didn't know if there would be any problems if he ate the blood crystal. However, he had the physique of a divine ocean stage cultivator. Even if there were any problems, it shouldn't be a big deal. At the very least, he wouldn't die. Thus, Lu Yi decided to let him try. Dao Shi-san took the blood crystal and frowned. It was obvious that he was very against eating this thing. If, however, since it was Lu Ye's order, he wouldn't disobey. He threw the blood crystal into his mouth and chewed. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The master and servant's cheeks were puffed up, and the sound of chewing rose and fell. Soon, Dao Shi-san had some strange reaction. A layer of blood-red light appeared on the surface of his body, flickering. Even his eyes were bloodshot. He seemed abnormally irritable, but there was nowhere for him to vent his anger. He could only breathe out visible air waves from his nostrils. He looked like an angry beast. Lu Yi could clearly feel that the aura on Dao Shi-san's body had changed a lot. However, Dao Shi-san's spirit energy fluctuations had obviously increased. Lu Yi understood that swallowing the blood crystal was useful for Dao Shi-san, but it wasn't as useful as it was for him. Dao Shi-san didn't have a talent tree, so he couldn't refine all the blood crystal like Lu Yi could. With the strong physique of a divine ocean stage cultivator, Dao Shi-san could only refine a small part of the energy. Moreover, because the blood crystal contained the energy of the blood race, it would affect Dao Shi-san's spirit energy to a certain extent. It was the same principle as when a cultivator swallowed too many spirit pills in a short period of time. It would lead to the accumulation of pill toxins. The obscure aura on Dao Shi-san's body was the best proof. In the end, Lu Yi concluded that Dao Shi-san could use the blood crystal to restore his cultivation, but the frequency had to be controlled. Otherwise, it wouldn't benefit him. Meanwhile, Lu Yi had already completely refined the power of the blood crystal. Just as he had expected, his cultivation level had recovered to the level of the Cloud River tier. However, judging from the spirit energy fluctuations, it was only at the first-order Cloud River stage. I still need more blood crystals. After sorting out the information about the blood race in his mind, Lu Yi came up with a plan. After a while, he called Zhang Zhilai over and gave him some instructions. Zhang Zhilai nodded repeatedly. Moments later, Zhang Zhilai sat on a stone chair in a cave in the Bright Moon Cave. Lu Yi and Dao Shi-san stood beside him as protectors. Below them were a dozen or so Blood Clan members of the Bright Moon Cave. This was the first time Zhang Jilai had gathered everyone for a meeting after becoming the cave master. Naturally, the Blood Race members were all present. Except for the Blood Race member guarding the entrance of Bright Moon Cave, everyone else was present. This was also thanks to Dao Shisan's prestige. If it was just Zhang Jilai, the Blood Race wouldn't be so afraid, but they had all witnessed Dao Shisan's ferocious power with their own eyes. None of the Blood Race members felt that they could block a punch from Dao Shisan. I called everyone here to announce two things, Zhang Jilai said according to Lu Ye's instructions. The Blood Race members listened quietly. The first thing is that from today onwards, the Holy Race members of Bright Moon Cave are not allowed to casually hunt or bully Blood Race members. If anyone violates this rule, don't blame me for being merciless. No one had any objections to Zhang Jilai being the cave master. After all, he was lucky enough to obtain such a powerful blood slave. In the blood refinement world, strength was king. However, Zhang Jilai's order to not hunt or bully blood food was unacceptable to the vampires. In the Blood Race's view, Blood Race members were livestock that they could take as they pleased. For so many years, the Blood Race members of the blood refinement world had lived this way. Zhang Jilai's order clearly conflicted with their deep-rooted beliefs, and it was indeed difficult to carry out. After all, they needed to cultivate. If they really carried out this order, it would be difficult for them to raise their cultivation in the future. Although the Blood Race could also absorb the world's spiritual energy or absorb the energy in spirit stones to raise their cultivation, this kind of cultivation method wasn't as fast as sucking Blood Race members' blood. The second thing is for everyone to choose to eat excrement. Every time you eat Blood Race members, you'll waste a large amount of nutrients, and excrement contains those wasted substances. Only by recycling them will you be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort. Zhang Jilai's words caused an uproar. Sir, we've never done this before. Can you teach us? The Blood Race member standing at the front looked at Zhang Jilai with desire. All right, I'll teach you. First, add stinky tofu, fermented bean curd, lemon, and excrement. Then use human bread to clamp them together and form a new food. Can you make it? Asked Zhang Jilai. Yes. Chapter 10-12. Even with Dao Shisan holding the fort, it seemed like he couldn't keep the situation under control. Zhang Jilai slapped the armrest of his chair and roared, "Shut up, all of you." The vampires quieted down, but one of them still said, "Cave Master, if we do that, what will happen to our cultivation in the future?" He couldn't really let them absorb the spirit energy of heaven and earth or absorb the power of spirit stones. What advantage would the sacred ones have? Zhang Jilai had already received Lu Ye's orders, so he said confidently, "Not letting you kill for food is for your future cultivation. Although it is not difficult to breed blood food, it is not easy to grow. If we really kill too many of them, sooner or later we will fall into a situation where there is no blood food to use. In the future, every once in a while, I will ask people to get some fresh blood from the nearby villages. It will definitely be enough for your cultivation. It would be difficult to improve the status of the human race." One of the vampires shouted, "The blood they let out doesn't taste good." Some of the vampires had thought of the method Lu Yi could think of before, but it was abandoned after a short period of time. The main problem was the taste. The feeling of grabbing a living person and sucking their blood was completely different from the feeling of drinking the blood released by the human race. The vampires had the desire to drink living blood. Of course, it didn't affect their cultivation. Zhang Jilai roared, "This is my first order. You have to listen whether you want to or not." The vampires weren't happy, but seeing Zhang Jilai's anger, they still agreed verbally. They didn't know why Zhang Jilai gave such an order. "Don't think about doing it secretly. If anyone dares to disobey, I won't let them off easily," Zhang Jilai ordered again. This was the rule of the blood refining world. The fist was the king. Now that he had Dao Shisan as a deterrent, no one dared to disobey him. The second thing, Zhang Jilai said, "I'm going to attack Baiwei Cave." Baiwei Cave and Bright Moon Cave were neighbors, so there was naturally friction between them. The vampires who fought with Zhang Zhilai before were from Baiwe Cave. The Baiwe Cavern had attacked the Bright Moon Cavern 3 times, but they were all repelled by Sun Miaozhu and Zhang Zhilai. Because of this, they lost a few blood breeds, and also planted the seeds of hatred. Therefore, when Zhang Zhilai said that he wanted to attack Baiue's abode, the blood breeds who were somewhat depressed suddenly became excited. Some blood breeds shouted, "We should have attacked them long ago." Abode Master, I am willing to be the first to charge in. Cave Master, count me in. I'll go too. For a moment, the crowd was agitated. They wished they could kill their way to Baiu's Immortal's cave right now and teach them a lesson. Lu Yi stood beside Zhang Zhilai and watched in silence. It could be said that he had experienced the vampire's belligerence. He had a lot of information about the blood-refining world in his mind, so he wasn't surprised. However, information was information, and seeing it with his own eyes was another matter. The reason why the blood breeds were so passionate about attacking each other was none other than the blood crystals. Compared to the heaven and earth spirit stones and the fresh blood of the blood clan, the blood crystal was the cultivation resource that the blood clan yearned for the most. This was the same reason why the demon beasts of the 9 regions often had conflicts with each other. The demon beasts could also devour the demon cores of the same attribute to improve themselves. The announcement of the Second Order immediately dispersed the pressure and unhappiness brought by the First Order. Zhang Zhilai nodded in satisfaction. Very good. Since that's the case, let's rest today and set off tomorrow. One of the blood breeds asked, Abode Master, are we all going? Do we need to leave someone behind to guard? No need to stay behind. Everyone will go. Zhang Zhilai waved his hand. This time, even the blood breeds at the spirit stream realm became excited. They didn't seem to be afraid of death at all. Who knew what they could do if they went? It was naturally Lu Ye's idea to mobilize all the blood breeds. To him, this battle would definitely end badly. Zizai, Long Qi, and the other spirit stream realm cultivators probably wouldn't be able to return alive. In any case, as long as Dao 13 followed Zhang Zhilai, he would be able to control the situation of the battle. When the time came, it would depend on how Dao 13 would deal with the situation. Lu Yi naturally wouldn't feel sorry for the deaths of the blood breeds. Instead, to him, the more deaths the better. This was because every blood breeds had their own blood crystals. The only difference was the quality of the blood crystals. What he lacked now was blood crystals. Of course, he couldn't afford to lose too many people. He even needed to recruit more people than he currently had because his target wasn't just the Baiwei cave abode. He had many more plans to fulfill, and all of this required him to have enough power as a foundation. It would be difficult for him to accomplish anything by himself. The night passed uneventfully. At dawn the next day, the blood breeds at the Bright Moon Cave abode aggressively charged out under Zhang Zhilai's lead. Dao 13 followed. Lu Yi stayed behind to guard the cave abode. On the surface, it was Zhang Zhilai who had ordered him to guard the cave abode, but in reality, Lu Yi didn't want to waste time. The strength he could use at the moment was limited. The matter of attacking the Baiwei cave abode could be left to Dao 13. In the entire Bright Moon Cave abode, apart from him, there were only the captured humans left. Most of them were women, and only a few were men. Without the blood breeds guarding them, they didn't know how to escape. The main thing was that they couldn't escape. The entrance to the Bright Moon Cave abode was suspended above the cliff. These humans who didn't have much cultivation couldn't leave. Lu Yi set up an alarm formation at the entrance of the cave and stayed in his cave. He didn't need to care about the humans. The main thing was that he didn't know how to manage them. He didn't need to worry about their survival. The Bright Moon Cave abode had beasts captured by the blood breeds and spirit rice from the nearby villages. It was enough for the humans to survive. They only needed to take care of themselves. Sitting cross-legged in his cave, Lu Yi immersed his mind and observed the new spirit runes on the talent tree. Previously, in the Nameless Secret Realm, he had only obtained 2 spirit runes. One was soul control, which was very useful. Whether it was Dao 13 or Zhang Zhilai, they were all his soul slaves. Under soul control, he had absolute control over his soul slaves. He didn't need to worry about them having any thoughts of betrayal. The other was spirit and branch connection. This spirit rune was somewhat similar to the Rainbow Phoenix duo. They were both used to borrow strength. However, it was easy to use but difficult to maintain. It was different from the Rainbow Phoenix duo. Once the Rainbow Phoenix duo spirit rune was formed, it would be imprinted on the body of Lu Yi and the other person. With Lu Yi maintaining it, there was no possibility of it dissipating. However, spirit and branch connection wasn't as stable. When the time came, once the spirit energy was agitated, the spirit rune might collapse. Moreover, because this spirit rune was used on more than two people, there would be more uncontrollable factors. When he first obtained this spirit rune, Lu Yi didn't think too much about it. However, now that he calmed down and thought about it, he realized that this spirit rune was a killing weapon. In some situations, it could be used to great effect. For example, when two armies were fighting, the cultivators on one side were in their own formation. Even if they cooperated with each other, they couldn't borrow strength from each other. However, the cultivators on the other side were spirit and branch connection. Their auras intertwined, and it was obvious who was stronger and who was weaker. Furthermore, with this spirit rune as the core, an unprecedented formation could be set up. The power of all the cultivators in the formation could be gathered together. If this could be done, the effect would be unimaginable. It was only at this moment that Lu Yi realized that he had underestimated the use of this spirit rune. He had borrowed many books on spiritual tattoos from his master's book collection pavilion and learned many spiritual tattoos from the books. However, he had never heard of this spiritual tattoo. This included spirit runes such as soul manipulation, flying colored phoenixes, and 1 point of telepathy. Before it was activated in the talent tree, Lu Yi had never thought that there would be such a mysterious spirit rune in this world. The Tao of spirit runes was indeed broad and profound. The use of the spirit and branch connection spirit runes still needed to be studied in detail. However, he could use this spirit rune as the core to refine a formation plate first. This way, those who possess the spirit and branch connection spirit rune could activate the effect of this spirit rune at any time and allow their nearby companions to borrow strength from each other. This way, they would be able to unleash greater strength. This would be helpful for some of his plans. He would do it as soon as he thought of it. Lu Yi had learned weapon refinement from Kong Kong in the Sword Instrument Sect's secret realm for 2 months and had long been initiated in the Tao of weapon refinement. However, because he didn't have the energy to be distracted, he didn't cultivate it deeply. But for him, even if he didn't have the right tools, it wasn't difficult for him to refine a formation plate with his fire attribute spirit chi. At most, it would take some effort because his cultivation was sealed. He had many materials in his storage bag. He sorted out some of them and urged his spirit chi to burn them. Time passed. Lu Yi spent half a day refining a formation plate that contained the spirit and branch connection spirit rune. However, because his cultivation was only at the first order Cloud River realm, the refinement of this formation plate wasn't very exquisite. After injecting his spirit force into it, the formation plate buzzed, and a halo of light appeared. Looking at it, it was clear that the halo was formed by small yin and yang elements. With the formation plate as the center, it radiated a radius of 10 feet. Lu Yi couldn't help but frown. This seemed to be a little different from what he had expected. It radiated a radius of 10 feet, which meant that cultivators could only borrow strength from each other within this range. Once it went beyond this range, it wouldn't work. Chapter 1013. If an array disk could only cover such a small area when activated, it would be of little use. Of course, this might be related to his current cultivation level being restricted and his lack of proficiency in refining array disks. Perhaps when his cultivation level increased and he became more proficient, the range of such array disks would be even larger. Just as he was thinking this, a heart-wrenching scream suddenly sounded. Lu Yi frowned and looked in the direction of the sound. That scream sounded again. At first, Lu Yi thought that someone had been killed, but he quickly realized that things might not be as he thought. He stood up and walked out of the cave, following the source of the sound. The sound came from the direction of the cave entrance, where the pregnant human women lived. When Lu Yi walked over, the pregnant women living in the caves were all looking around, worry written all over their faces. Sensing Lu Ye's footsteps, these women quickly shrank back and hid in the corners. Lu Yi walked straight to the entrance of a cave on his left and glanced around. He saw a woman sitting on the ground with a pale face. Her face and forehead were covered in sweat, and her hair was disheveled. She had one hand clasped on the stone wall to the side, her hand dripping with blood. Her other hand was stroking her belly. Blood was flowing between her legs. This woman was about to give birth. Although Lu Yi had guessed this was the first time he had encountered such a situation. For a moment, he didn't know how to deal with it. Fortunately, he quickly reacted. He turned around and shouted, "Which one of you knows how to deliver a baby?" It was definitely not the first time a pregnant woman gave birth here. Someone must have given birth before, so someone must have experience. No one dared to speak. To these kidnapped women, they had never left their caves since they came here, nor had they spoken to anyone. Naturally, they didn't dare to answer Lu Ye's question. Lu Yi frowned. He could only ask again, "Who has experience? Come out and help." Still, no one responded. Lu Yi had no choice. He couldn't just randomly grab someone to help. They might not be able to help, and might even cause more trouble. Gritting his teeth, he stepped into the cave. Seeing him walk in, the woman who was exerting her strength raised her head and looked at him sadly, the pain in her eyes mixed with a trace of pleading. Lu Yi stepped forward, thought for a moment, and then placed a hand on her shoulder. "I don't know how to do it, but I'm afraid you'll have to work hard on your own. I'll do my best to protect you." As he spoke, he poured a bit of spiritual power into the woman's body. This woman wasn't a mortal, but a cultivator. However, her cultivation wasn't high, only at the fourth-order spirit stream realm. Even so, the pain of childbirth was not something she could bear. In such an environment, with no one to help her, it was very likely that her life would be in danger. Under the urging of the spirit power, the woman's tightly knitted brows relaxed a little. She suddenly took a deep breath, exerted force, and let out a suppressed scream. At this moment, Lu Yi had an incredulous look on his face because he discovered something that he couldn't understand. He was silently using his spiritual power to perceive the situation inside the woman's body. As time passed, the woman's labor situation wasn't very good. Although she used her strength several times, she still couldn't give birth to the fetus in her belly. On the contrary, she became weaker, and gradually, even her vitality became weaker. How could she have the strength to give birth again? Human babies consumed a lot of the mother's foundation to give birth to a blood race baby. Generally speaking, any woman who gave birth to a blood race baby wouldn't live long. Many times, human women would die during the process of giving birth. Every time this happened, blood race members would cut open their bellies to take the fetus. Take this moment, for example. Lu Yi could clearly feel that the fetus in the woman's belly was madly devouring everything in its mother's body. This was also the reason why she couldn't give birth smoothly even though she was a fourth-order spirit stream realm cultivator. If it were a normal fetus, it would have already been born. Feeling the woman's vitality on the verge of collapse, Lu Yi knew that if he didn't do anything, this woman would definitely die here. No longer hesitating, Lu Yi urged the Rainbow Phoenix dual flight spirit tattoo on the woman. In an instant, the spirit tattoo was constructed, and the woman, who had fallen into despair and tears flowing from the corners of her eyes, suddenly opened her eyes. She felt an astonishing surge of vitality pouring into her body through some unknown method, like a dry land being watered by rain. Not only did it give her a lot of strength out of thin air, but even the foundation of her body, which had been devoured by the fetus during her pregnancy, was quickly replenished. She naturally knew where all this came from. Turning her head to look at Lu Yi, who was holding her arm, she cast a grateful look at him and exerted her strength again. After a short while, the woman's final scream rang out, and the fetus in her belly was successfully born. Lu Yi raised his eyes and looked forward, his eyelids drooping slightly. There was no baby crying because a blood race fetus wasn't born in the form of a baby. At this moment, the woman gave birth to an oval egg with a dark red surface and visible veins. At first glance, it looked like a flesh egg, and the veins on its surface were slightly pulsating, as if it was breathing. In the blood race's name, this was a blood fetus. A blood fetus needed to be sent to a special place to be nurtured. Only then would the blood fetus break out of the egg and become a true blood race member. The place where the blood fetus was nurtured was called the blood river. In the entire blood refinement realm, the blood river ran through the north, south, east, and west, branching off in different places. It could be said that the blood river was the foundation of the blood race. Without the blood river, there would be no blood race. This information was obtained from the memories of the dead blood race member. Lu Yi looked at the blood fetus, recalling the information he had obtained. Unexpectedly, the woman beside him suddenly stood up, drew the mountain knife from his waist, and viciously chopped at the blood fetus between his legs. With just one slash, the blood fetus was cut open. However, because the mountain knife itself wasn't sharp, it couldn't cut open the blood fetus. The woman's action undoubtedly surprised Lu Yi, because in the minds of the blood race was sacred and inviolable. No matter what the blood race did to them, they could only silently bear it. Even if the blood race wanted their lives, they wouldn't resist. This wasn't because they were weak or cowardly, but because of their deep-rooted beliefs. The vampires weren't the only ones who viewed the humans of this world as livestock. Even the humans themselves viewed themselves as livestock. Under such circumstances, it was inconceivable for a human woman to have the guts to draw her blade and chop at the blood fetus. That was why he didn't do anything despite being able to stop her. He could only watch as the woman wailed and waved her Pan-Shan saber, chopping the blood fetus that she had painstakingly given birth to into pieces. Blood flowed all over the ground. It wasn't until the blood fetus was no longer recognizable that the blood fetus began to bawl her eyes out. Lu Yi silently sheathed the mountain knife, got up, and walked out of the cave. Although he had never delivered a baby before, he at least knew that a lot of hot water was needed. He decided to boil some water. He didn't need to do it himself. He called over the 2 human youths who had once served Sun Miaozhu and instructed them to bring some hot water over. Lu Yi personally sent the water to the woman's cave and asked her to clean it up herself before leaving. Although the woman had consumed a lot of her foundation during pregnancy, she had already replenished it with the nourishment of the Rainbow Phoenix Double Flight Spirit Tattoo. She only needed a short rest to completely recover. He busied himself. 2 hours later, Lu Yi, who was studying how to better refine the Kindred Branch Spirit Tattoo formation plate, heard a series of footsteps. Soon, the woman came to his cave and stood still. Lu Yi put down the formation plate in his hand and looked up to see the woman standing there. She must have washed her body, as the original filth had long been washed away. However, she didn't change her clothes, so they were still dirty. Her hair was simply combed, but it was still a little messy. She stood at the cave entrance nervously and met Lu Yi's gaze. She only avoided it for a moment before looking up at Lu Yi. She pursed her lips and walked in. Without a word, she knelt in front of Lu Yi and kowtowed a few times. She probably wanted to express her gratitude. After all, if it wasn't for Lu Yi just now, she would most likely be dead. Lu Yi activated his spiritual power and raised his hand. The woman's upper body involuntarily straightened. "What's your name?" Lu Yi asked. The woman replied, "Lan Chua." Her voice was a little hoarse. Although, because of Lu Yi, her body's deficit was replenished, but after all, she had been shouting so loudly. "Why did you kill the blood fetus?" Lu Yi asked again. "After all, you gave birth to him." Lan Chua, who had calmed down, suddenly became agitated again. "The blood clan is not good. If he grows up, I don't know how many people he will harm, so I killed him." Lu Yi noticed one thing. She didn't call the blood clan the Holy Clan, but directly called them the blood clan. Moreover, she didn't have the slightest respect for the blood clan, only endless hatred and hatred. This was completely not seen in the villagers of Songnan village. It seemed that even under the great influence of the blood-refining world, there were still people who were born with the heart to resist. Do you think I shouldn't have killed him? Lan Qiyu looked at Lu Yi.
No.
Lu Yi shook his head. Even if you didn't kill him, I wouldn't have let him live. Although the child was innocent, the blood clan was still the blood clan. Just as Lan Qiyu said, if he grew up, who knew how many people he would harm? Lu Yi didn't intend to let the blood fetus live. Hearing such an answer, Lan Qiyu was obviously surprised. She stared at Lu Yi in a daze. She didn't know who Lu Yi was, but when she saw Lu Yi return with Zhang Jilai yesterday, she thought Lu Yi was the other party's blood slave. But today, her life was saved by Lu Yi, so she didn't want to deceive Lu Yi, so she answered whatever Lu Yi asked. Looking at it now, the man in front of her didn't seem to be a blood slave, because if he was a blood slave, he wouldn't have the intention to harm the blood clan. Chapter 10:14. Are you willing to cultivate? Just as Lan Qiyu was lost in thought, Lu Ye's voice came to her ears again. Lan Qiyu was stunned and quickly knelt on the ground again, kowtowing respectfully. I'm willing to cultivate with sir. Lu Yi nodded, becoming more and more certain that this woman in front of him was different from most of the humans in the blood-refining world. There were two reasons why he decided to teach her cultivation. Just the Bright Moon Cave mansion alone had many pregnant women waiting to give birth. In the future, these pregnant women would definitely give birth to blood race babies. He couldn't just go and deliver babies every time. Therefore, he needed a helper who could help him in this regard. Dao Shursen couldn't be relied on. That simple-minded guy was probably even worse than him. Lan Qiyu was undoubtedly the best candidate. She had her own opinions and the heart to resist the blood race. She also had experience in giving birth. This was the most suitable thing to leave to her. However, human pregnant women faced great danger during childbirth. Lan Qiyu's fourth-order spirit stream realm cultivation was still too low. With higher strength, she could better ensure the safety of those human pregnant women. As for the other reason, it was something Lu Yi discovered when he used his spirit energy to protect Lan Qiyu during childbirth. The woman in front of him had many spirit apertures opened in her body. There was no spirit aperture barrier at all. When he channeled his spirit energy into Lan Qiyu's body, there was no obstruction at all. His spirit energy flowed freely in her body. This was an extremely incredible thing. For Lu Yi himself, when he was in the spirit stream realm, each spirit aperture opened, and Ying had to break through the barrier of her spirit aperture. The reason why many cultivators were stuck in the spirit stream realm for their entire lives was because the further they advanced, the harder it was to break through the barrier of their spirit apertures. Those who couldn't open 240 spirit apertures could only waste their time in the spirit stream realm. Only those who opened 240 spirit apertures could have a chance to advance to the Cloud River realm. Even those who opened 240 spirit apertures might not be able to open 360 spirit apertures. In the Nine Continents world, those who could do this were all good seedlings with a chance to reach the Divine Sea realm. However, Lan Qiyu's spirit apertures were naturally in an open state. This was also the reason why Lu Yi was surprised at that time. Lu Yi had heard of natural spirit apertures before. Such people were generally called natural Dao body. As long as they had sufficient cultivation resources, there was no bottleneck in the spirit stream realm. In other words, Lan Qiyu could easily reach the Cloud River realm. Entering the Cloud River at the late Essence realm. As for how great his prospects would be after he entered the Cloud River, it all depended on her own cultivation aptitude. However, those who were born with a Taoist physique were all extremely talented. Therefore, it could be foreseen that Lan Qiyu's future achievements would not be too low. If it were an ordinary human woman, Lu Yi wouldn't want to waste his energy on her. However, it was rare to meet someone with a natural Taoist aptitude. It would be a pity to leave her alone. Therefore, Lu Yi decided to teach Lan Qiyu cultivation. There was no such thing as a sect in the blood-refining world. Naturally, there was no such thing as senior or junior brother. Lan Qiyu stretched out her hand. Lu Yi raised his hand and placed it on her wrist. He circulated his spirit energy according to the great sun-colored glass art circulation path and circulated his spirit energy through her body. Lan Qiyu closed her eyes and silently felt, memorizing the flow of spirit aperture. In the blood refinement world, although humans could cultivate, the blood race would even intentionally impart some cultivation techniques to humans. However, those cultivation techniques were all incomplete because the blood race would not allow humans to have cultivators with high cultivation. In various places where humans gathered, the spirit stream realm was the most common and common. Only those humans who were valued by the blood race and taken in as blood slaves would receive more gifts and have the opportunity to cultivate to a higher realm. After a while, Lu Yi stopped. Do you remember? Lan Qiyu nodded thoughtfully. I remember. The cave next to me is empty. In the future, you will live there. If there is anything you don't understand about cultivation, you can ask me. As Lu Yi said this, he took out a storage pouch and flipped it upside down. Inside, he placed some spirit pills, spirit stones, and 9 sets of clothes for her. He then warned her not to consume too many spirit pills during cultivation. Thank you, Senior Apprentice Brother Lu Yi. Lan Qiyu accepted the pouch and thanked him. In addition, those women outside need your care. If there are any pregnant women, please help them. Lan Qiyu pursed her lips and nodded. She would do this even if Lu Yi didn't say it. She hesitated for a moment and said, Senior Brother Lu Yi, the blood fetus they gave birth to. Kill. Lu Yi spat out a cold word. Lan Qiyu's eyes were firm, and she gladly agreed. Lan Qiyu stayed in the cave, next to Lu Yi. A day later, Zhang Zhulai returned triumphantly. He immediately reported to Lu Yi about the battle. The overall strength of the Baiwei cave was stronger than the Bright Moon cave because there were more blood breeds. This was why the Baiwei cave always took the initiative to attack this side. However, this time, with Dao 13 following them, the Baiwei cave had no power to resist. In the battle, both sides lost more than half of their forces. However, the fierce battle became one-sided after Dao 13 joined the battle. Especially after seeing Dao 13 easily kill the Baiwei cave's cave master, the remaining blood breeds no longer had the heart to resist and surrendered. Although the battle on the blood breeds side was fierce, there was an unwritten rule that they could surrender. This was the atmosphere, so it was not a shameful thing. Therefore, when Zhang Zhulai brought out about 10 blood breeds, he still brought back about 10 blood breeds. The number did not change much, but the overall strength of the blood breeds was not small. The few spirit stream realm blood breeds who accompanied him to the battle did not survive. They died one after another. According to my lord's orders, we have brought back the pregnant human mothers from Baiwei Cave Mansion. The others have also been sent to a safe place. In addition, we have obtained 11 blood crystals. 5 of them have been distributed to others. These are the remaining 6. As Zhang Zhulai spoke, the quality of the 6 jades was not bad. It was also Lu Ye's orders to distribute half of the blood crystals. If you want a horse to run, you have to let the horse eat until it is full. Lu Yi understood this principle. Although he urgently needed the blood crystals to recover his cultivation, he would not take all of it for himself. Moreover, Zhang Zhulai had already ordered the Bright Moon Cave to stop sucking the living blood. This caused many blood breeds to be unhappy. If he took all of the blood breeds, it would be detrimental to his future rule. It would be best to distribute half of the blood crystals. This way, the blood breeds would have something to eat, but not enough to fill their stomachs. Lu Yi raised his hand and took 5 of the blood crystals. Zhang Zhulai was overjoyed. Thank you, Master, for your reward. He thought that Lu Yi would take all of them. Who knew that Lu Yi would leave one for him? Zhang Zhulai was naturally grateful. Quickly advance to the true lake realm. Your cultivation is too low, Lu Yi said calmly. Yes, he was an autarch. Zhang Zhulai is terrified. Lu Yi replied fearfully. He could sense that Lu Yi was extremely ambitious. At present, his cultivation level was only at the Cloud River tier, so he could still be of some use. However, as time passed, he would only become less and less important. If there came a day when he couldn't help Lu Yi, then he would become completely worthless. At that time, his fate would definitely be miserable. Zhang Julai had never been so eager to cultivate. Explain our rules to the newcomer. You should know what to do if he dares to disobey. Yes. You may leave. Lu Yi waved his hand. Zhang Julai left. Holding the 5 blood crystals in his hand, Lu Yi took out a smaller one and gave it to Dao 13. It was not that he was unwilling to part with it. However, the blood crystals were the essence of the blood breed's cultivation. It was similar to the Yao core. Dao 13 did not have a talent tree and could not burn the impurities in the blood crystals. Fortunately, he had a strong foundation as a divine ocean realm body cultivator. Otherwise, Lu Yi would not dare to give him this. However, if he wanted Dao 13 to recover his cultivation quickly, he had to rely on the blood crystals. Therefore, he had to control the frequency. Dao 13 took the blood crystal and threw it into his mouth. Lu Yi also picked up a blood crystal and put it in his mouth. His cultivation had now recovered to the Cloud River realm. The 4 blood crystals in his hand might allow him to recover to the true lake realm. The blood breeds in Bright Moon Cave Mansion rested for 2 days before they set off again, under Zhang Julai's lead. Baiyu's cave mansion was not the only cave mansion nearby that could be attacked. Basically, there was a blood breeds cave mansion every 100 kilometers in the blood refining world. Lu Yi needed the blood crystals to recover his cultivation, so he could only start with these blood breeds. The 4 blood crystals did not allow Lu Yi to recover to the true lake realm. He was stuck at the 9th order Cloud River realm. However, when Zhang Julai returned, he had recovered to the true lake realm. When the blood breeds were not in Bright Moon Cave Mansion, Lu Yi spent most of his time studying the twin Qi shared branch spirit tattoo array, thinking about how to improve it. At the same time, he was thinking about the purpose of the 9 continents Tianji to send him to the blood refining world. He could not unify the blood refining world. This was too difficult. According to the information he had obtained about the blood refining world, it was a great world that was not inferior to the 9 continents. It had many divine ocean realm masters. If he really had the ability to unify the blood refining world and kill all the blood breeds, he could definitely unify the 9 continents. Therefore, the 9 continents Tianji did not send him here to unify the blood refining world. It was even more impossible for him to save the humans here. If the Earth Realm's great leader wanted to save the humans here, she had to unify the blood refining world and kill all the blood breeds. Lu Yi could not understand the purpose of the 9 continents' great leader to send him here. Chapter 10:15. In addition, there was another thing that made Lu Yi feel helpless. How was he going to return to the 9 prefectures? The experience this time was different from the last time he entered the Wushuang continent. Before entering the Wushuang continent, he had already obtained 4 pillars of divine mysteries. With the pillars of divine mysteries as a connection, he could teleport back to the 9 prefectures. This time there was no pillar of heavenly secrets, so there was naturally no way to teleport back to the 9 prefectures. For the time being, it was hard to come up with any ideas. However, finding a way back was undoubtedly the most important thing right now. Only by finding a way back would Lu Yi be able to do as he pleased in the blood refinement realm without any worries. He didn't dare to say that he could unify the blood refinement realm and save the human race in this realm, but at the very least, he could do his best to prevent as many humans as possible from being harmed by the blood race. Lan Qi's cultivation was very smooth. She had been cultivating ever since she left that day, and when Lu Yi saw her again, she was already at the 6th order spirit stream realm. Lu Yi could not help but sigh at how terrifying an innate Taoism aptitude was. Of course, this was also related to the fact that he had given her enough cultivation resources. Lan Qi's innate Taoism aptitude did not have any bottlenecks in the spirit stream tier. With ample resources, her cultivation speed was naturally very fast. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. The number of Blood Clan members in the Bright Moon Cave had obviously increased. There were now 40 to 50 of them. The Bright Moon Cave was originally quite spacious, with only a dozen or so Blood Clan members living in it. However, now that there were so many people, it became crowded. Among these vampires, except for Zhang Jilai, only 2 of the original members of the Bright Moon Cave were still alive. The rest of the vampires had all surrendered from nearby caves. Not only were there more vampires, but there were also over 100 human pregnant mothers. Every time they captured an immortal's cave, Zhang Jilai would bring the pregnant mothers back to the Bright Moon Cave. This was also Lu Ye's order. These poor human women were pregnant with vampire fetuses and couldn't be left in their original cave abodes. As for settling them in a nearby village, that was even more unrealistic. Hence, they had no choice but to bring them back. As for the women who weren't pregnant or the men who had been kidnapped to serve the vampires, they had all been sent to a safe place and dismissed. Bright Moon Grotto's side was in a bit of chaos now that there were more vampires. However, after Dao 13 killed 2 Blood Race members who didn't follow the rules and wanted to violate human women, the rest of the Blood Race became obedient. In the past month, Lu Yi had consumed many blood crystals, and his cultivation had fully recovered. Dao 13 still had a long way to go. On the surface, his cultivation was only at the 7th order Cloud River realm. It would definitely take some time for him to recover his original Spirit Sea realm cultivation, but with his Spirit Sea realm foundation, as long as he didn't encounter a blood race cultivator of the Spirit Sea realm, no one would be his opponent. Inside Lu Ye's cave, Dao Shisan sat cross-legged, looking bored. Zhang Jilai looked at Lu Yi nervously. "My lord, in the current situation, we can either expand the cave residence or attack and occupy a larger territory. What will you choose?" There were too many people living in the small Bright Moon Cave abode. Not to mention the vampires, even the pregnant mothers of the human race were squeezed into one cave. If he wanted to have a stable living environment, he had to think of another way. Zhang Jilai could only think of 2 ways to expand the cave residence and occupy a larger territory. The former was simple as it only required the blood breeds to exert some effort. However, if it was the latter, then they would need to attack a place with a true lake-stage blood breeds. This was quite a bit of pressure for Zhang Jilai, because even if he attacked and occupied a place, his cultivation wasn't enough, and it would be difficult for him to convince the masses. He also knew that the strength of his subordinates wasn't due to his own ability, but because of Lu Yi. He even understood that Lu Yi wouldn't be satisfied with the current situation. Since he frequently led people to attack the nearby cave residences, he knew that sooner or later, he would have to face a cave residence of a higher level. He had been anxious about this for the past few days. "Don't you know what I'm thinking?" Lu Yi looked at him calmly. "Why do you need to ask me?" Lu Yi was very dissatisfied with this soul slave of his. The main reason was that this soul slave's cultivation was too slow. During this period of time, his Cloud River realm cultivation was enough to keep the situation under control, but if his cultivation couldn't break through to the true lake realm, then he wouldn't be of much use in the future. Zhang Jilai's forehead was sweating. Knowing Lu Ye's plan, he said, "My lord, please give me a few days." "What are you going to do?" "I want to take a trip to the Blood River," Zhang Jilai said through gritted teeth. The Blood River was the foundation of the blood race. It wasn't just a hotbed for hatching blood fetuses, it could also cleanse the blood race's bloodline, greatly increasing their strength in a short period of time. But the Blood River was an extremely strange place. Placing blood fetuses there wouldn't be too big of a problem. Most blood fetuses could hatch safely in the Blood River, and blood race infants could grow rapidly in the river, only taking a few years to become adults. But there was a great risk for adult blood race members to step into the Blood River. No one knew why, but it had been like this since ancient times. But if a blood race member could pass through these risks, they could obtain unimaginable benefits. Increasing their strength was the most basic, and if they were lucky enough, they could even improve their bloodline and become a true holy race member. Holy race was what the humans in the blood refinement realm called the blood race. They also called themselves that. But among the blood race, there were true holy races, usually called holy seeds. Compared to ordinary blood race members, holy seeds had greater potential and could unleash greater strength. Moreover, they had a natural bloodline suppression against ordinary blood race members. But even in the vast blood refinement realm, true holy seeds were extremely rare. Zhang Zhulai naturally didn't think that he could become a holy seed, but he knew that it was impossible for his cultivation to increase too much in a short period of time. If there came a day when he was no longer useful to Lu Yi, his fate would be worrying. With the soul manipulation divine rune, Zhang Zhulai couldn't betray Lu Yi, but he was also unwilling to become a dispensable character by Lu Ye's side. In the past, he wouldn't have dared to enter the Blood River to cultivate, because it was too dangerous. Out of 10,000 Blood Race members who entered the Blood River, there might not even be one who survived. He didn't think that he was any different from other Blood Race members. Entering the Blood River was almost certain death, but in order to continue serving Lu Yi, he still decided to enter the Blood River. Have you thought it through? Lu Yi naturally knew what he was thinking. Yes, please allow me. Although Zhang Zhulai was afraid, his expression was still firm. Lu Yi nodded. Since that's the case, then go tomorrow. Yes. Zhang Zhulai retreated. Obviously, he had to make some preparations to enter the Blood River. At the very least, he had to conserve his energy for tomorrow's test. After Zhang Zhulai left, a figure suddenly appeared at the door. Lu Yi looked up and saw that it was Lan Qiyu, who lived in the cave next door. In the past month, Lan Qiyu's cultivation had increased very quickly. Now, she was at the 8th Order Spirit Stream realm. No cultivator in the 9 regions could compare with her cultivation speed. Lu Ye's cultivation speed was also considered fast, but at the Spirit Stream realm, it took him 2 to 3 months on average to advance one realm. Especially at the late stage of the Spirit Stream realm, it took a lot of time to advance each realm. If Lu Yi didn't see it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed that Lan Qiyu could advance 4 minor realms in just 1 month. Lan Qiyu came to ask Lu Yi some questions about cultivation. It didn't take much to answer Lan Qiyu's questions. At the end, Lan Qiyu said, "Recently, 2 sisters gave birth to blood fetuses. Fortunately, their lives are not in danger. I have already dealt with the blood fetuses, but it's not good for the 2 of them to stay here. I would like to ask Senior Brother 13 to help me send them out." After attacking many cave mansions nearby, all the pregnant mothers were gathered at Bright Moon Cave. The frequency of giving birth was very high. Previously, there were pregnant mothers who gave birth to blood fetuses, and Lan Qiyu dealt with them in this way. The blood fetuses were directly destroyed to prevent future troubles. She asked Dao 13 to help send the women who gave birth to the blood fetuses to the nearby villages. The reason why she wanted to follow was naturally because Dao 13 was not good at communicating with others. Moreover, she was a human of this world, so it was more convenient for her to communicate with others. "I will go with you tomorrow," Lu Yi said. Lan Qiyu said, "Senior brother is going out tomorrow." This was strange. During this time, Lu Yi had been staying in his cave. Except for the day when he helped her deliver the baby, Lan Qiyu didn't see Lu Yi leave. "There are some things I want to see," Lu Yi casually explained. Lan Qiyu naturally had no objection. The night was silent. The next day, Zhang Zhulai walked out of the Bright Moon Cave mansion with a serious expression. He saw the figure standing at the entrance of the cave and was very surprised. He looked around and saw that there was no one, so he whispered, "Master, you are? I will go with you to see the Blood River." Lu Yi was naturally curious about the existence of the Blood River. Previously, his cultivation had not recovered, so it was not good for him to run around. Now he could take a look and see why the Blood River was so magical. Zhang Zhulai mistakenly thought that Lu Yi was worried about his safety, so he was a little touched. Lu Yi took out the spirit boat and sent the 2 human women onto the spirit boat. He called out to Lan Qiyu and flew in a direction. Zhang Zhulai followed closely by his side. Dao 13 stayed behind to look after the house. The blood race were not people who knew their place. If there was no one guarding this place, who knew what they would do to the pregnant mothers? Lu Yi did not want to see any tragedy when he returned. They rushed all the way. Soon, they arrived near Songnan village. Lu Yi stopped the spirit boat and instructed Lan Qiyu, "Send them to the village." Previously, Lan Qiyu personally sent the human women to Songnan village. Lan Qiyu obeyed. She returned in a short while and handed the two women to the village chief. The group set off again. After flying for less than half a day, they arrived at a bare mountain top. This mountain was very strange. There was not a single blade of grass growing within a radius of dozens of miles. It looked extremely desolate. At the top of the mountain, there was a pond about 2 to 3 acres in size. The pond was not clear water, but a kind of viscous, blood-red liquid. It was as if the entire pond was filled with blood. To be able to see the latest updates of this book next time, please be sure to save your bookmark. Chapter 10:15, Blood River. Zhang Julai's choice is free to read. Chapter 10:16. Even before he got close, the smell of blood rushed into his nose. Blood pools. This was also one of the ways in which the Blood River appeared in the blood refining realm. The Blood River was an underground river, hidden deep underground rather than flowing on the surface. The blood pools scattered throughout the blood refining realm were the entrances and exits for vampires to enter the Blood River. Lui stood beside the blood pool and observed it with a frown. Although he had obtained some information about the blood pool from the memories of the dead vampires, seeing it with his own eyes was another matter. At first glance, the blood in the blood pool looked exactly like real blood, whether in shape, color, or smell. It was very strange. Bubbles of various sizes constantly rose from the bottom of the blood pool and then burst, splashing blood everywhere. At this point, Zhang Julai's expression became more and more dignified. Whether he lived or died after taking a step forward would depend on his own fortune. However, as Liu Ye's sole slave, he had to take the step if he wanted to stay by Liu Ye's side for a long time. Taking a deep breath, Yang Kai turned around and performed a vampire salute. "Sir, I'm going." Liu Ye nodded slightly. Zhang Julai no longer hesitated. With a leap, he jumped into the blood river. There wasn't even a splash of blood. Liu Ye urged his divine sense to investigate Zhang Julai's situation, but to his surprise, his divine sense couldn't penetrate within 1 zhang of the blood pool. The blood in the blood pool had the effect of blocking divine sense. However, Liu Ye didn't care much about this. Although Zhang Julai was his sole slave, as a vampire, how could he not take human lives? Before meeting Liu Ye, there must have been some humans who had suffered under his hands. Therefore, even if Zhang Julai were to die here, Liu Ye wouldn't feel any heartache. He could easily take in another soul slave. Now that his cultivation had been restored, any blood clan below the Divine Sea realm would be no match for him. He bent down, wrapped one of his hands with spirit chi, and reached into the blood pool to feel the mysteries of the blood pool. Soon, a look of surprise appeared on his face. This blood pool was undoubtedly very corrosive because the spirit chi protecting his hand was rapidly being consumed, and there were even sizzling sounds. He had encountered vampires in the soaring dragon realm, so he wasn't surprised. What surprised him was that the blood pool seemed to contain an extremely surging energy, which reminded him of the 9 states' earth veins. In the nameless secret realm, he had felt this surge when he devoured the earth veins. However, the blood pool was undoubtedly richer than the earth veins in the nameless secret realm. The only difference was that the nameless earth veins was more suitable for cultivation. If a human cultivator were to recklessly absorb it, it would definitely be extremely dangerous. Just the corrosive power alone was not something a human cultivator could withstand. If it was forcefully absorbed into the body, it would cause great damage to the spiritual cavities and meridians. Could it be the earth vein of the blood refining realm? Liu Ye's heart suddenly jumped fake thoughts. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. The earth veins of a realm must cover the entire realm. That was why there were strange places like blood ponds everywhere in the blood refinement realm. And every blood pond was connected to the underground blood river. "You stay here. I'll go down and take a look." Liu Ye turned to Lan Qiyu and said, since the blood in the blood pool contained surging energy, it would undoubtedly be of great help to his cultivation. In the blood refining realm, he couldn't connect to the heavens and exchange for a golden spirit stick to cultivate. Although he still had a lot of cultivation resources and swallowing blood crystals was also a way to cultivate, how could it compare to the convenience of using a spirit stick? But if he could use the earth veins of the blood refining realm to cultivate, his cultivation speed would still be faster, but using a spirit stick would be much faster than ordinary methods. He had been in this world for more than a month, and his cultivation had gone from being suppressed to being fully restored. It was also a process of settling down. His seventh-order True Lake realm had barely stabilized, so there wouldn't be any hidden dangers if he continued to raise his cultivation. In this strange world, he had to obtain as much strength as possible. He couldn't rely on Dao Shi-san for everything. Senior brother, be careful. Lan Qi couldn't help but worry, but she didn't stop him. Lu Yi nodded slightly, wrapped his spirit qi around his body, and jumped down. Blood splashed, and Lu Yi disappeared. Immediately, a piercing sound came from all directions as his spirit qi was rapidly consumed. Lu Yi tried to disperse the spirit qi protecting him, but when the blood around him came into contact with his skin, he felt like needles were stabbing him. Countless needles pierced all over his body. Fortunately, it was still bearable. The surging energy in the blood didn't need to be absorbed by Lu Yi as it drilled into his body through his pores as if it had a mind of its own. The pain became even more intense. Suddenly, there was a change in the talent tree. Lu Yi immersed himself in observing and saw a thick gray mist burning on the talent tree. This undoubtedly meant that the blood contained a lot of harmful things to him, so after it entered his body, it was burned by the talent tree. Lu Yi quietly sensed for a moment and determined that there wasn't much danger. It was just the feeling of being stabbed by needles that he had to endure. This was the mystery of the talent tree. One had to know that the Blood River was an extremely dangerous place for adult vampires. Those who entered would die 9 times out of 10 because of a terror contained in the Blood River, not to mention Lu Yi, a human. However, after being burned by the talent tree, the terror turned into gray mist and dissipated, causing Lu Yi to only feel a stabbing pain all over his body. He released his divine sense to sense his surroundings, but it was still blocked within 3 meters of him. There was no trace of Zhang Zhulai, and he didn't know where he had run off to. Lu Ye's body sank down, and after a few hundred meters, he suddenly felt an undercurrent surging around him. He waited quietly for a moment, but didn't dare to go any deeper. Divine sense was useless in this place, and if he was sucked in by the undercurrent, it was very likely that he wouldn't be able to find his way back. Moreover, he found that although the method of using the Blood River to cultivate worked, it couldn't last for long. This was because it consumed too much fuel for the talent tree. He had stored a lot of fuel for the talent tree. Not to mention other things, in the Sword Instrument Sect's secret realm, he had used the talent tree to absorb the earth lung fire for 2 months. All of that energy was stored in the talent tree as fuel to burn the impurities. However, there were too many harmful impurities in the Blood River. Lu Yi had never seen the talent tree burn with such a dense gray mist. At this rate, Lu Yi felt that if he cultivated here for 1 or 2 months, the talent tree's fuel would be used up. This was undoubtedly a very bad deal. The talent tree was his greatest help, and Lu Yi couldn't let it lose its ability to burn the impurities. Especially in this blood-refining world, he didn't have a way to replenish the talent tree's fuel for the time being. Therefore, although he felt that it was a pity, he could only give up helplessly. He urged his spiritual power and rushed up. In a moment, he rushed out of the Blood River. With his spiritual power protecting his body, he didn't get stained by the blood. After landing, Lu Yi immediately turned his head to look to the side, and his eyes drooped. Lan Qiue was nowhere to be seen, and an unfamiliar vampire was standing beside the Blood River. The vampire was holding a blood fetus in his hand, and it seemed that he was here to deliver the blood fetus to be hatched. When Lu Yi came up, he was looking into the Blood River. Lu Ye's appearance gave him a fright. After seeing Lu Ye's appearance, the vampire was greatly surprised, and then he shouted angrily, "How dare you trespass into my Blood Clan's forbidden areas?" The Blood River was the foundation of the Blood Clan, and it was a hotbed for hatching blood fetus. Naturally, the Blood Clan valued it greatly. In the blood-refining world, Humans weren't qualified to step into the blood river. Therefore, when he saw Lu Yi rush out of the blood river, the vampire was furious. "Where is she?" Lu Yi's voice was low. There were no signs of fighting or blood, but Lan Qiyu was nowhere to be seen. Lu Yi already had a guess as to where she went. However, he didn't expect that such an accident would happen while he was deep in the blood river. He couldn't help but blame himself. If he had known this would happen, he would have sent Lan Qiyu back after she settled the 2 human pregnant mothers. At that time, he thought that since it was on the way, he would bring Lan Qiyu along and return together after he finished investigating the blood river. It would save time. But now, it seemed that Lan Qiyu must have found the vampire and had nowhere to hide, so she jumped into the blood river to find Lu Yi. In a place like the blood river, even a pure-blooded vampire would have a slim chance of survival, let alone a human like Lan Qiyu. Moreover, her cultivation was only at the spirit stream realm. "You should take care of yourself first," the vampire shouted angrily. He raised his hand and grabbed at Lu Yi, his fingernails sharp and cold. There was a clanging sound and a flash of a blade. The vampire maintained his clawing posture, but his arm had been cut off at the elbow. The flash of the blade was so fast that he didn't feel any pain. He didn't even have time to bleed. However, he obviously realized what had happened. He looked at Lu Yi in astonishment. He couldn't understand where a blood food got the guts to attack him. Another flash of the blade, and the vampire's body was completely frozen in place. He was only at the Cloud River realm. How could he block Lu Yi's attack? Lu Yi turned and jumped into the blood river. He released his divine perception to the greatest extent to search for Lan Qiyue's whereabouts. It wasn't until Lu Yi left that the Blood Clan member's body shook, and his head suddenly rolled off from his body. Blood spurted from his neck as he fell to the ground with a plop. After half an hour, Lu Yi rushed out of the blood river again. His face was so gloomy that it was about to drip water. He couldn't find Lan Qiyu. The environment under the blood river was too harsh. Not to mention the undercurrents, divine perception was also greatly suppressed. Under such an environment, it was extremely difficult to find a person. When Lan Qiyu jumped in, he should have been in the blood river. At that time, he didn't even notice Lan Qiyue's whereabouts, let alone look for her afterward. If a spirit stream realm cultivator fell into the blood river, there was basically no chance of survival. Chapter 1017. He should not have taken the trouble of not sending Lan Qiyu back in time. Instead, he brought her with him. He should not have left her here alone. The main reason was that Lu Yi did not expect that the blood breeds would arrive in such a short time. Lan Qiyu was poisoned by the blood breeds. Under such circumstances, she had no way to escape and could only jump into the blood river to search for Lu Yi. She probably did not know how powerful the blood river was. After all, she did not have much experience. When she saw Lu Yi jump into the blood river, she also jumped in. If she knew how powerful the blood river was, she would have waited for Lu Yi to save her. That way, no matter what, she could have kept her life. Lan Qiyu was gone. Lu Yi blamed himself. There was one more thing that made him feel depressed. Zhang Zhilai was also gone. Because he left the soul manipulation divine pattern in Zhang Zhilai's mind, Lu Yi could sense Zhang Zhilai's existence. However, when he went deep into the blood river to search for Lan Qiyu, the connection between him and the soul manipulation divine pattern suddenly disappeared without a trace. This undoubtedly meant that Zhang Zhilai did not survive the blood river's baptism and tempering of his blood vessels. He had already fallen somewhere in the blood river. This was within Lu Yi's expectations. The blood breeds went deep into the blood river. Zhang Zhilai was nothing special compared to the other blood breeds. There was a high probability that he would not have survived. However, because of Lan Qiyue's accident, this was within Lu Yi's expectations. He could not help but feel depressed. This was great. When they came, they were a group of 3. When they left, they were all alone. The corpse of the blood breeds that he had just killed was lying beside him. The head was separated from the body, and the blood had already flowed dry. Lu Yu went forward and took out the blood crystal. He then waved his sword and chopped the blood fetus that rolled to the side into pieces. Only then did he soar into the sky and rush in a certain direction. In the depths of the blood river, the undercurrent surged violently. Lan Qiyu was drifting with the current. She could only feel that her life force was rapidly flowing away. This was caused by the blood river's water corroding her body. Lu Yi could still resist the corrosion of the blood river's water by using his spiritual power. However, how could Lan Qiyu do that? Under the blood's corrosion, her skin was festering. She could not find any trace of Lu Yi. With her current spirit stream realm cultivation, it was impossible for her to rush out. The river of blood was swept up by the undercurrent. She no longer knew where she was. Her life was about to come to an end, but she didn't have much fear. She was originally an ordinary human woman, a blood meal and plaything in the eyes of the vampires. On the day she gave birth to the blood fetus, she thought she would die without a doubt, but Lu Yi saved her life with her help. She had also killed several blood fetuses during this period of time. It was enough for him to die like this. It didn't seem to be a pity. His consciousness continued to sink. Suddenly, a speck of golden light bloomed in his field of vision. In the depths of the river of blood, this speck of golden light was extremely dazzling. Lan Qiyu did not know what this golden light was. At this moment, even her thoughts were about to fall silent. However, she still instinctively stretched out her hand and held the golden light in her palm. Lan Qiyu felt as if she had been burned by a soldering iron. She quickly let go of her hand, but the golden light in her palm had already imprinted itself into her body. It traveled up her arm and landed on her chest. In the next moment, Lan Qiyu opened her mouth and seemed to be screaming. However, her mouth was filled with blood and no sound came out. The golden light on her chest suddenly shone brightly, illuminating Lan Qiyu's entire body in a dazzling golden light. In the blood-refining world, the vampires had countless large and small gathering places. The smallest one was undoubtedly the cave dwelling. The Bright Moon Cave Dwelling and the Baiwe Cave Dwelling were both in this category. In such a gathering place, the vampires of the Cloud River realm were usually in charge. They only governed an area of 100 miles. However, above the Immortals' Cave, there was an even higher level of existence, which was the Blessed Land. Comparatively speaking, the Blessed Land's area of governance was much larger. At the very least, it would have a radius of a few hundred kilometers. The larger Blessed Land's area of governance was 3,000 to 5,000 kilometers. Within the Blessed Land, all humans were the property of the vampires in the Blessed Land. They could take whatever they wanted. The difference between a cave dwelling and a Blessed Land was not only the size, but also the number of vampires and the cultivation level of the vampires. The Bright Moon Cave Dwelling could only be called a cave dwelling because the strongest vampires were only in the Cloud River realm. If Sun Miaozhu had the cultivation level of the True Lake realm, it would have been the Bright Moon Blessed Land. Therefore, in every Blessed Land where the vampires gathered, there would be True Lake realm vampires overseeing it. Above that would be the cave dwelling level gathering places. With Spirit Sea realm vampires overseeing it, they governed at least 10,000 miles in radius. In comparison, whether it was a cave dwelling, a Blessed Land, or a cave dwelling, they were equivalent to the sects of the 9 continents. However, the vampires did not need to pass on their teachings, so naturally, they did not have any camaraderie. For the vampires, the blood crystals in their fellow vampires were the most desirable cultivation resource. This also created the unique chaotic order in the blood-refining world. The Ganlu Blessed Land was located in the Ganlu Mountain, 1,000 miles away from the Bright Moon Cave Dwelling. Nominally, the Bright Moon Cave Dwelling was under the jurisdiction of Qianlu Blessed Land. Including the many small caves conquered by the Bright Moon Cave Dwelling in the past month, they were all under the jurisdiction of the Ganlu Blessed Land. Looking at the entire blood-refining world, the scale of the Ganlu Blessed Land's jurisdiction was not too big. This was because the Blessed Land's master, Yu Lingfeng, did not have a high cultivation, only at the True Lake Realm's 7th Order. Although there were some True Lake Realm vampires under his command, their cultivation was weaker than his. In the Ganlu Mountain, where the Blessed Land was located, there was a continuous building complex with rich world energy. Compared to the cave-dwelling environment of the Bright Moon Cave Dwelling, it was undoubtedly much better. In such a place, it was not a problem for a few hundred people to live in. If it was slightly expanded, it could even accommodate a few hundred people. At this moment, in the main hall of the Ganlu Blessed Land, more than 10 True Lake Realm vampires were sitting on both sides. Yuling Feng sat on the main seat in the hall, discussing matters with the other True Lake Realm vampires under his command. The matter they were discussing was obviously related to the recent actions of the Bright Moon Cave Dwelling. Bless Lord, the Bright Moon Cave Dwelling has been a bit excessive recently. According to the news, they have conquered all the nearby caves in a month's time. Most of the clansmen were killed on the spot, and only a few survived. Now, the Bright Moon Cave Dwelling has gathered about 50 clansmen, and all of them are above the Cloud River Realm's 7th Order. Although the vampires frequently attacked each other, there had never been an incident like the Bright Moon Cave Dwelling. After all, the strength of each cave dwelling was not too different. If a war really broke out, it was hard to say who would win. Maybe they could win 1 or 2 battles, but it was impossible for them to keep winning. However, the news they received was that the Bright Moon Cave Dwelling was like a hot knife through butter, sweeping clean several nearby caves. Not only did they destroy those caves, but they were also constantly strengthening and consolidating their forces. Under normal circumstances, the vampires of the upper echelons would not interfere with the battles of the lower echelons. As long as the Blood River existed, the vampires would continue to exist. So, what if some people died? Moreover, the blood crystals of the dead vampires would become nutrients for the growth of the surviving vampires. However, the Bright Moon Cave Dwelling was constantly consolidating and strengthening their forces, so the Ganlu Blessed Land could not help but pay attention. At present, the Bright Moon Cave Dwelling did not have the strength to threaten the Ganlu Blessed Land, but if they continued like this, who knew if they would plot against the Ganlu Blessed Land? This kind of thing had happened in the blood refining world before. Moreover, with so many caves destroyed, it would affect the lower echelons. Tribute. In the blood refining world, every 3 months, each cave dwelling would capture some blood food from their territory and offer it to the Blessed Land for the vampires to enjoy. As the number of caves under his control decreased, the amount of blood and food offered as tribute decreased as well. This undoubtedly affected the benefits of the Blessed Land. How can a small Bright Moon Cave Dwelling be so powerful? I remember that the cave master of the Bright Moon Cave Dwelling, Sun Miaozhu, was only in the Cloud River Realm. Could it be that she broke through to the True Lake Realm? Yuling Feng showed displeasure. Bless Lord, that Sun Miaozhu is already dead. Now, the Bright Moon Cave Dwelling is under the control of a person called Zhang July. The recent abnormalities of the Bright Moon Cave Dwelling only happened after he took over. Zhang July. Yuling Feng did not have any impression of this person. He had many caves under the Demon Realm, and only the cave masters he could remember. How could he remember this Zhang July? This person is also not in the True Lake Realm. It is said that he is taken in 2 very powerful blood slaves, which is why he can do things like this. Although the communication in the blood refining world was not as convenient as in the 9 continents, there were still things similar to sound transmission stones, so the transmission of information was not too difficult. A month was not long, but it was not short either. The Bright Moon Cave Dwelling had successively attacked the outside world, causing quite a commotion. How could it not be noticed by the vampires? What blood slaves can be so powerful? Yuling Feng did not understand. Bless Lord, now is not the time to be concerned about the blood slaves. How should we deal with the Bright Moon Cave Dwelling? Bless Lord, please come up with a plan. Yuling Feng pondered for a moment, then said, Wan Feng. A True Lake Realm cultivator walked out from below and placed his hand on his chest. Here, I'll have to trouble you. Go to Bright Moon Cave and order Zhang July to immediately stop his current actions. Also, ask him to hurry up and offer up the latest batch of blood food, as well as the share of the cave mansions that he destroyed. What if he doesn't listen? Wan Fong asked. Then kill him. Find an obedient cave master. Yuling Feng's eyes flashed with a cold light. Yes. Wan Fong turned and left, quickly leaving the main hall. After this matter was discussed, the group of True Lake Realm vampires discussed other matters for a while before dispersing. Yuling Feng walked towards his bedroom with his hands behind his back. He secretly thought that if there was a chance, he would like to meet Zhang Zhilai's 2 blood slaves and take them for his own use. Although he was the blessed lord of Ganlu Blessed Land, he had not been having an easy time recently. The vampires did not have a strong sense of hierarchy. Basically, strength was king. His True Lake Realm 7th Order cultivation was still able to stabilize his position as the Blessed Lord for the time being, but among the other True Lake Realm cultivators under him, there was already one whose cultivation was almost on par with his. When that time came, he would either have to chase that True Lake Realm cultivator out and let him establish his own sect, or he would have to share the power in his hands. Either way, he was not willing to do it. As for killing that blood race cultivator, it was not appropriate to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Killing him would definitely give him a good blood crystal, but it would also weaken the heritage of Ganlu Blessed Land. If other blessed lands came to attack, he would have one less talent under his command. Chapter 1018. Yuling Feng was caught between a rock and a hard place. The other members of the blood race only saw him as a high and mighty figure, but who could understand his difficulties? As he pondered, he suddenly paused and looked up. An unfamiliar figure appeared in his field of vision. The man's hands were crossed, and he held a long saber in front of him as he looked at him quietly. Yuling Feng suddenly felt a chill run down his spine because he hadn't noticed this person's existence at all before seeing him. And judging from his appearance, he was actually a human. He had always been a cautious person, and the moment he saw this person, he instinctively retreated and opened his mouth to call out. Under the premise that he didn't know the other's cultivation level, it was undoubtedly unwise to fight him rashly. The other party was able to sneak in here without anyone noticing, so he obviously had some tricks up his sleeve. At this moment, the wisest thing to do was to warn him and take down this strange human with his subordinates. But he had just opened his mouth when he felt dizzy, as if he had been hit by a sledgehammer. For a moment, his mind was in a mess, and he couldn't speak. Then, a great pain came from the depths of his head, as if his brain had been crushed. This severe pain woke Yuling Feng up for a moment, and he immediately understood what had happened to him. He had been attacked by a divine sense. In other words, the one waiting for him here was actually at the spirit sea tier. A moment later, Yuling Feng stood up with a pained expression and stood respectfully in front of Lu Yi. Being forcibly implanted with the soul control divine mark, his reaction was much greater than Zhang Zhilai's. It wasn't that Lu Yi's actions were violent, but rather that it had to do with his cultivation level. Zhang Zhilai was only at the Cloud River tier, so Lu Yi's divine sense could easily break through his spiritual defenses and implant the Mahan Soul divine mark. Zhang Zhilai didn't have much to gain from this whole process. But Yuling Feng wasn't far from the spirit sea tier, and although he hadn't developed a soul and divine sense, his innate spiritual defenses were much stronger than Zhang Zhilai's. Lu Yi's forcible breakthrough had caused his spiritual sense to be shaken. This is Thousand Flow Blessed Land, right? Lu Yi held a piece of animal skin in his hand. There was a hole in the animal skin that Zhang Zhilai had drawn for him before. He had followed the scribbled map and found this place. But was this really Thousand Flows Blessed Land? He wasn't sure, but it was probably right. Yes. Yuling Feng replied respectfully. Who is the blessed master here? Lu Yi asked again. It's me. What a coincidence. When Lu Yi came here, he only wanted to enslave a random True Lake stage cultivator. It didn't matter whether he was a fortune lord or not. Even if he wasn't, with Lu Yi behind the scenes, he would quickly become a fortune lord. Are you Yuling Feng's? This name was also heard from Zhang Zhilai. Yes. Lu Yi nodded slightly. Since that was the case, it saved him some trouble. He went straight to the point. I have something to tell you. Remember it. Yuling Feng quickly straightened his face and listened respectfully. After a night of silence, the next day, Yuling Feng, who had more or less recovered, gathered his True Lake Stage subordinates for a meeting. In the hall, over 10 True Lake Stage cultivators were gathered together. They had no idea why Yuling Feng had gathered them here today. However, the figure that appeared beside Yuling Feng attracted a lot of attention because it was a young man from the human clan. No one had seen him before. Blessed Master. This human is... A middle-aged blood race cultivator looked at Lu Yi curiously and asked, "This is the Blessed Master's new blood slave. Don't mind him." Yuling Feng stood up from his seat and said loudly, "Today, I called you all here to announce 2 things. The blood race cultivators quickly sat up straight. First, from today onwards, in the areas under the Blessed Master's jurisdiction, the blood tribute will be abolished and replaced with human blood. In addition, the holy clans are not allowed to harm humans." A month ago, Zhang Zhulai announced this at the Bright Moon Cave abode and caused a huge uproar. This time it was the same. As Yuling Feng's voice fell, the group of blood race cultivators seemed to have heard something unbelievable. The middle-aged blood race cultivator immediately asked, "May I ask why Blessed Master made such a decision?" It was natural for blood race cultivators to consume blood. Since ancient times, it had always been this way. No one had heard of any place changing this habit. There is no why. This is the Blessed Master's order. Yuling Feng's attitude was very tough. It was mainly because of Lu Ye's instructions. He was just following orders. For him, Lu Yi was the heaven and the earth. There was no reason. "I don't agree," the middle-aged blood race cultivator shouted. "Presumably, no one here will agree." "Yes, Blessed Master. It is indeed inappropriate to abolish the blood tribute. Please reconsider. Human blood can be consumed, but how can dead blood taste better than living blood? If there is no more blood, how can there be any living blood in the future?" This matter was related to their own interests, so the blood race cultivators couldn't sit still and shouted one after another. In particular, the middle-aged blood race cultivator, who spoke first, shouted the loudest. His cultivation was almost the same as Yuling Feng's, and his status in Thousand Flow Blessed Land was very high. He also felt Yuling Feng's complicated attitude towards him recently. Recently, he was also thinking about his own way out. Should he stay and continue to be loyal to Yuling Feng or go out and establish his own sect? According to his cultivation, he could have already established his own sect and become the master of a blessed land. However, not all blood race cultivators were willing to be a cave master or blessed master. Sometimes, relying on the wings of others was more free and unfettered. If there was any trouble, there was someone above to take care of it. Moreover, in the current blood refining world, each blessed land had its own territory. Even if he went out and established his own sect, it would be useless if he didn't have a territory to control. Therefore, he didn't expect Yuling Feng to give such a muddle-headed order at this critical moment. He couldn't help but feel a little restless. If he took this opportunity to unite with the other blood race cultivators, he would have a great chance to eliminate Yuling Feng. When the time came, he would be the blessed master of Thousand Flow Blessed Land. Just as he was thinking this, Yuling Feng slammed the table beside him and shouted angrily, "Who dares to disobey this blessed master's order?" The other blood race cultivators shrunk their necks, but Yuling Feng still had some dignity. The middle-aged blood race cultivator gritted his teeth and said, "If blessed master's order is wrong, then we can disobey." With a clanging sound, a long saber was slowly unsheathed. Lu Yi, who had been standing beside Yuling Feng all this time, approached the middle-aged blood race cultivator step by step. All the blood race cultivators were stunned, but after feeling Lu Ye's killing intent, they immediately reacted. The middle-aged blood race cultivator was furious. A mere blood slave dares to be impudent. Take the crowd. With that said, a bloody light surged around him and turned into the shape of several arrows. With a wave of his hand, the blood arrows shot toward Lu Yi. Although he had the idea of replacing Yu Lingfeng as the master of this blessed land, he was still a little apprehensive about falling out with Yu Lingfeng right now. However, when it came to a blood slave like Lu Yi, he had nothing to fear. Killing this blood slave could be considered a warning to Yu Lingfeng. If he still insisted on going about things the wrong way, then he would have no choice but to join forces with the other blood race cultivators to capture Yu Lingfeng. With that in mind, the blood race cultivator's expression changed drastically, because the blood arrows he used didn't deter Lu Yi in the slightest. With a few flashes of saber light, the blood arrows shattered with a loud bang. Then, Lu Yi approached within 10 meters of the blood race cultivator and chopped down with his saber. Bao, the middle-aged blood race cultivator's heart was filled with alarm. He frantically stimulated his blood essence and spiritual power to form a solid barrier. However, this barrier was still cut open by the saber. At the same time, the middle-aged blood race cultivator's body was also split in two under the powerful impact. His broken body fell to the left and right sides. Blood race cultivators looked around. None of the blood race cultivators dared to make a sound. With the example of the previous blood race cultivator in front of them, saying no at this time was the same as courting death. Dead blood and living blood are nothing more than useful for cultivation. Besides the taste, it doesn't hinder one's cultivation. This matter is decided. From now on, under the rule of my 1,000-flow blessed land, the saints are not allowed to casually harm humans. Have all cave dwellings send people to collect blood from human villages on a regular basis.
Yes.
A sparse response could be heard. How could Yu Lingfeng not see through their thoughts? He said, compared to blood food, the most useful thing for my saint race is blood crystals. Instead of blood crystals, you are constantly thinking about blood food. How laughable. Bless Lord, although blood crystals are good, they aren't easy to obtain. A blood race cultivator boldly spoke up. Every blood crystal represented the life of a blood race cultivator. Although they had the ability to kill some weaker blood race cultivators to obtain blood crystals, they couldn't allow their own blood to dye the foundation of the hall red. The blood race cultivators who were shouting loudly just now were all silent at this moment. They all looked in horror at Lu Yi, who was skillfully extracting blood crystals. Only now did they realize that this blood slave, whom they didn't take seriously, had the terrifying strength to easily kill all of them. In the entire 1,000-flow blessed land, other than Yu Lingfeng, the middle-aged blood race cultivator, who just died, was the strongest. However, he still couldn't even take a single strike from the other party. With this kind of strength, even Yu Lingfeng might not be able to block a single strike from him. They really couldn't understand where Yu Lingfeng had gotten this blood slave. They were on guard. This kind of blood slave couldn't have appeared out of nowhere. It must have been subdued by Yu Lingfeng long ago. However, he had been hiding it all this time. Only today did he let this blood slave show up. And as soon as it showed up, it did such a shocking thing. It was obviously to deter them. Who else disagrees? Yu Lingfeng's expression was cold. If the blood race cultivators under his command really did that, he wouldn't have any subordinates to use in the future. He could only sneak into other people's territory and make his move secretly. However, doing so had its risks. If other blessed lords found out about it, there would be friction and disputes. Who knows, his blood crystals might even be coveted by others. It's easy to get the blood crystals. Yu Lingfeng snorted. Immediately gather all the people in the cave abodes. I want to attack Bei Min blessed land. Lu Yi stood at the side and watched quietly. He couldn't help but think of Zhang Julai's high-spirited appearance a month ago. He couldn't help but sigh at how similar the scene was. Of course, this matter was secretly led by him. How could it not be similar? Please enter the latest update in your browser. Please keep your bookmark well so that you can check the latest update of this book next time. Chapter 1018, Blood Slave Free Reading in 1,000-Flow Blessed Land. Chapter 1019. In Qianlu Blessed Land, all of the vampires had set off for battle. Only Lu Yi was left behind to guard the blessed land. The rest were the pregnant women sent from the various caves. These women couldn't be placed casually. Before they gave birth, they could only stay here and look after them. After they gave birth, they could be sent to the nearby villages. It had been a month since Lu Yi arrived at Qianlu Blessed Land. On the second day, Dao Shen led a group of people from the Bright Moon Cave to meet up with him. This could be considered to have strengthened Qianlu Blessed Land's strength. In any case, although the vampires brought by Dao Shen weren't at the true lake realm, they were all the remaining elites of their respective caves. In a few days, the troops of the Bright Moon Cave would gather and set off for Bei Min Blessed Land. The battle tastes leaves unrestricted A, K North, E Blessed Land, and E Blessed Land held the fort. The battle progressed smoothly. Lulong had lost many true Lake Stage Blood Clan stones. 2 of them escaped, and 4 of them surrendered. Qianlu Blessed Land's foundation overnight. They had strengthened by quite a bit. They had even recruited several true Lake Stage Blood Clan members who were stronger than Yuling Feng. According to the rules of the vampires, Yuling Feng couldn't continue to be their blessed land under such circumstances. However, with Dao Shen's deterrence, even if the vampires were stronger than Yuling Feng, they didn't dare to act rashly. This made them very envious. They didn't know where Yuling Feng got such a powerful blood slave. After conquering Bei Min Blessed Land, after about 10 days of reorganization, Qianlu Blessed Land set off again to attack another blessed land. On the one hand, Lu Yi stayed behind to take care of the human women. On the other hand, he cultivated and thought of a way out. He could rely on the soul manipulation rune to make a name for himself in the blood refining realm. This was because the targets he chose weren't strong, so he could easily control them. However, if he met a divine sea realm vampire, his soul manipulation rune might not work. Moreover, his strength alone was limited. He couldn't change the general situation of the blood refining realm. Perhaps the humans could live a stable life in the blood refining realm. However, how many lands like Qianlu Blessed Land were there in the entire blood refining realm? If he couldn't change the general trend of the blood refining world, he wouldn't be able to save the human race in this world. Lu Yi had been thinking about the purpose of 9 regions Tianji to send him to this world. Although he didn't have much clue, it was definitely related to the human race in this world. Therefore, the most important thing right now was to improve his cultivation. It would be best if he could reach the spiritual sea realm. This way, he would be able to control some blood race of the divine ocean realm, and he would be able to protect even more humans. To Lu Yi, cultivation was still very simple. It could even be said that if he did not consider the consumption of the talent tree's fuel, the blood river would be the best place to cultivate. But because the talent tree's fuel was consumed too quickly in the blood river, Lu Yi could only give up on this dry cultivation method. Fortunately, he had a lot of spirit stones and spirit pills in his storage space, and Yuling Feng had brought him a lot of blood crystals when he returned from the battle a few days ago. In the short term, there was no need to worry about cultivation resources. Although the efficiency of cultivation was not as good as using spirit sticks in the 9 regions, there was no need to worry about his cultivation progressing too quickly, which would lead to an unstable foundation. Lu Yi estimated that when he consumed all the spirit stones and spirit pills he had, his cultivation would be able to reach the true lake realm 8th order. As for how to cultivate after that, he could only take it one step at a time. At worst, he could just kill some blood race members and take their blood crystals to cultivate. It could even be said that he could enter the blood river to cultivate. As long as he controlled the consumption of the talent tree's fuel, there wouldn't be any problems. A woman's scream came from not far away, from where many human women were gathered. Lu Yi frowned and released his divine sense. After silently probing for a moment, he determined that the woman's life was not in danger and did not help. Ji Tai came to Lu Ye's side with determination, placed the blood fetus in front of Lu Yi, looked at him with fear, and ran away. This girl was a helper chosen by Lu Yi from the human women. It had to be said that the human race had been oppressed and enslaved for too long in the blood-refining world, so long that they didn't even know how to stand up. Even with Lu Ye's support, these human women still lived in fear every day. This girl was one of the few who was brave enough to be chosen by Lu Yi as his helper, but even so, every time she delivered the blood fetus, she didn't dare to communicate with Lu Yi. Because in the girl's understanding, Lu Yi was a blood slave of the blood race, a member of the blood race. The blood race was even more sacred and inviolable. Even if it was a blood fetus that had not yet hatched, she didn't dare to harm it and brought it here for Lu Yi to deal with. This inevitably made Lu Yi miss Lan Qiyu. Previously, when Lan Qiyu was in the Bright Moon Cave abode, he did not need to intervene in these women's affairs. She alone could take care of those pregnant women, help them deliver the babies, and take care of the blood fetus. Looking at the blood fetus in front of him, which was still stained with blood, Lu Yi raised his hand expressionlessly and pushed his spirit chi. Under the roiling flames, the blood fetus instantly turned to ashes. He continued cultivating. Spirit stones were placed around him. The roots of the talent tree reached into the spirit stones and quickly absorbed the energy in them for his own use. He kept stuffing spirit pills into his mouth and swallowed them. Occasionally, he would eat a piece of blood crystal and chew it until it was crunchy. The next day, the blood race from Qianlu Blessed Land returned under the leadership of Yulingfeng. Lu Yi didn't ask about the results of the battle. To him, the battle between the blood race was like a dogfight. It didn't matter to him how many people died. He just wanted to protect Qianlu Blessed Land. At the very least, he wanted to let the human women who gathered here have a stable living environment. However, judging from the number of blood crystals brought back by Dao 13, many blood race had died in this battle. After a while, he bowed. Sir. Lu Yi didn't even lift his eyelids. Yulingfeng didn't mind. After interacting with Lu Yi so many times, he was already used to Lu Yi's attitude. He reported the situation of the battle. Their side lost a lot of troops, but they subdued even more blood race. Therefore, after this battle, Qianlu Blessed Land's foundation was not bad. However, there was no Xiaoshua. Instead, there was a river of people. After the report, Yulingfeng still didn't leave. He looked a little hesitant. Is there anything else? Lu Yi asked. Only then did Yulingfeng speak. Sir, there are many true Lake Realm blood race cultivators gathered here, especially the newcomers. Most of them don't respect me and are coveting my position as the Blessed Land's lord. I intend to kill them all. Lu Yi knew what he wanted to do. Yulingfeng couldn't do it alone. Therefore, he needed someone to help him. Lu Yi turned to Dao 13, who was sitting beside him and chewing on a blood crystal. He ordered, in the future, kill any blood race member he asks you to kill.
Oh.
Dao 13 answered in a muffled voice. Yulingfeng was overjoyed. Thank you, sir. In the eyes of others, Dao 13 was his blood slave. However, only he knew the real situation. Dao 13 wasn't under his control. However, as long as the blood race knew about this, no one would dare to be impudent in front of him. If Sir has no other orders, I will take my leave. The next few days were peaceful and uneventful. There were many new blood race members at Qianlu Blessed Land. Naturally, they had to reorganize and prepare for the upcoming battle. This kind of battle allowed the victorious side to reap the benefits. After all, they would get a share of the blood crystals of the dead blood race members. Compared to drinking the blood of the blood race members, the blood crystals were undoubtedly better for the blood race members. On this day, Lu Yi was cultivating when Yulingfeng ran over in a panic. Sir, bad news. Lu Yi opened his eyes and looked at him. What's the matter? There's news. Baiyun Blessed Land, Tianke Blessed Land, and Qingqiu Blessed Land have joined forces to attack Qianlu Blessed Land. The three forces are already on their way and will arrive by tomorrow. Lu Yi's brows furrowed slightly. Although this was within his expectations, it seemed that the reaction of these blessed lands was faster than he had expected. Qianlu Blessed Land had attacked two neighboring blessed lands in the past month. Their movements were huge. It was impossible for the other blessed lands to not hear about it. As long as they heard the news, they would definitely respond. Taking the initiative to attack was undoubtedly the best response. And this time, the three blessed lands had joined forces. It could be seen how decisive these three blessed lands were. Although Qianlu Blessed Land had a strong army now, it was impossible for Qianlu Blessed Land to withstand the joint attack of the three blessed lands. Lu Yi and Dao Shisan could naturally lend a hand. With the two of them, guarding Qianlu Blessed Land would not be a problem. The only problem was that once the battle started, the fate of the human women in the Blessed Land would be worrying. After all, in a chaotic battle, who would care about the lives of humans? Therefore, Lu Yi had to ensure the safety of those human women. Got it. Go and make the arrangements. Dao Shisan will go with you. Anyone who dares to disturb the morale of the troops will be killed without mercy. Yes. Yuling Feng's heart calmed down, and he left with Dao Shisan. Lu Yi also stood up and went to take care of the human women. In this place, he had to arrange a guard to protect them, so as to ensure their safety as much as possible. In addition, he had something he wanted to try. He could use this battle to test its power. To be honest, the three blessed lands joining forces to attack together was 1+1. Even if Yuling Feng and the other vampires were all killed, as long as Qianlu Blessed Land was still there, he could create another puppet. In any case, it was fine as long as the war did not affect the human women. In just 2 hours, Lu Yi finished setting up a defensive array. He did not rest but wandered around the Blessed Land. The array discs he had refined during this period were placed everywhere in the Blessed Land. He busied himself until the middle of the night. The entire Qianlu Blessed Land was now filled with soldiers. Many vampires had gathered together to secretly prepare for the upcoming battle. Chapter 10:20. The blood race was a race that was good at war. This was engraved deep in their blood. They were born with more knowledge than humans. Hence, after receiving news that the three blessed lands had joined forces to attack, Qianlu Blessed Land quickly responded. Yuling Feng constantly sent out blood race members to scout out the enemy's movements. News after news came back from the outside. By dawn, the three blessed lands' allied forces were only a few hundred miles away from Qianlu Blessed Land. Yuling Feng was also mobilizing his troops. Although his cultivation was not very high, he had the demeanor of a general. Under his command, Qianlu Blessed Land's arrangements were orderly. Thankfully, he had borrowed Dao 13's power a few days ago, and now, he had gained some prestige in front of the Blood Tribe subordinates. After another 2 hours, the allied forces of the three blessed lands finally arrived at the city. Without any verbal communication, the allied forces of the three blessed lands immediately launched their attack. To the blood race, attacking each other was the most normal thing. There was no need to waste words, just fight. The allied forces of the three blessed lands were twice as strong as Qianlu Blessed Land. With the arrival of the three blessed lands, their morale soared. The allied forces closed in on Qianlu Blessed Land in a semicircle. Very quickly, the two sides clashed with blood arts. Streaks of mysterious blood arts weaved through the air, creating a spectacular scene. The blood race rarely used defensive arrays. This was mainly because their blood arts had a strong corrosive effect on defensive arrays. In such a battle, defensive arrays were not very useful and could be easily destroyed by the blood arts. The corrosive effect of the blood race's blood arts did not only affect arrays, but also spiritual weapons. Lu Yi had already verified this point in the Soaring Dragon Realm. Hence, the blood race did not have any spiritual weapons. The battles between the blood race mainly relied on their ever-changing blood arts or close combat. The sharp nails of the blood race were their spiritual weapons that had been tempered thousands of times. The advantage in numbers allowed the allied forces of the three blessed lands to gain the upper hand. Qianlu Blessed Land's side soon suffered many casualties. Figures fell from the sky, their vitality dissipating. Dao Shisan had already single-handedly killed his way into the enemy group. At first, not many blood race members paid attention to him. He was only a blood slave, so naturally, he was not worthy of their attention. Even though Dao 13 had recovered his true lake stage cultivation, he was still not worthy of their attention. However, Dao Shisan soon attracted the attention of many true lake stage blood breeds. The strength that Dao Shisan displayed was simply too terrifying. Even true lake stage blood breeds would not be able to last more than 3 breaths if he got close to them. In just a few moments, Dao Shisan was surrounded by more than 10 true lake stage vampires. Under normal circumstances, the blood race would not be a match for Dao Shisan even if they joined forces. After all, Dao Shisan was at the Divine Sea Realm. However, the Blood Clan's blood arts were still extremely mysterious. The true lake stage vampires used some unknown technique to create a river of blood in the blink of an eye. Dao 13 fell into the river of blood and disappeared without a trace. Even the vampires who controlled the river of blood also fell into it and fought with Dao 13. Lu Yi looked at this scene in surprise, but he didn't go to help. He could sense that Dao 13's aura was still very stable. He had hoped that Dao Shisan would help balance the forces of both sides, but with the current situation, he could no longer count on Dao Shisan. Without Dao 13's interference, the alliance of the 3 blessed lands became even stronger. The blood race's losses in Ganlu Blessed Land continued to increase. Lu Yi sighed. He could only take out the sword gourd from his storage space and infuse it with spiritual energy. In an instant, streaks of sword chi flew out from the sword gourd and reaped the lives of the enemies. Some of the blood race saw this scene and knew how powerful he was, so they wanted to stop him. However, even if the blood race managed to dodge the sword chi, they would still turn into corpses when they reached Lu Yi. The battle continued without end. Ganlu Blessed Land was gradually declining. The difference in their forces, especially the true lake stage vampires, was huge. Under normal circumstances, Ganlu Blessed Land would not be able to defend itself. After 2 hours of fighting, less than half of the blood race were left in Ganlu Blessed Land. Lu Yi felt that the time was about right. He took out a jade pendant and infused it with spiritual energy to activate the array he had set up earlier. When the buzzing sound rang out, the array discs he had buried earlier resonated endlessly. An invisible force enveloped the entire Ganlu Blessed Land. All of a sudden, the vampires in Qianlu Blessed Land who were forced to the ground felt an extremely wonderful feeling. Under the cover of the invisible force, they found that they could easily connect with their companions. Under this connection, they could even borrow the strength of their companions. Twin Chi-linked branches array. This was Lu Ye's preparation. Recently, other than cultivating, he had been studying the Twin Chi-linked branches array. He had also refined many array discs with this spirit pattern. With the array discs as nodes, he scattered them all over the Blessed Land and set up a Twin Chi-linked branches array. He could use this battle to test how powerful this array could be. This array itself did not have any killing power. It could only allow the blood race members in the array to connect and borrow each other's strength. So, as long as the coordination was good enough, the blood race members of Ganlu Blessed Land would be able to display strength beyond their own. It would not be a problem to resist the attack of the 3 blessed lands. The key was cooperation. This was the first time the blood race members of Ganlu Blessed Land had experienced such a thing, so they naturally did not cooperate well. But soon, they understood the mystery of this array. They immediately gathered in groups of 3 to 5, led by the strongest blood race member and followed by the others. For a time, the situation was barely stabilized. But it would not be so easy to win. Moreover, Lu Yi also noticed that the Twin Chi-linked branches array he had set up had a huge drawback, which was that it could not distinguish between friend and foe. The array was dead, so it naturally could not distinguish between friend and foe, even with Lu Yi presiding over it. So when the enemy blood race members fell into the range of the array, they quickly understood the mystery of the Twin Chi-linked branches array. Under the command of the 4 directions, more enemy blood race members fell into the array. Lu Yi frowned and turned his head to look at the blood river in the air. Dao 13 was trapped inside, so Ganlu Blessed Land had lost one of their top forces. If they wanted to win this battle, they had to get Dao 13 out. Or Lu Yi himself. However, He could not leave for too long. He had to protect the human women in the Blessed Land. Although he had already activated the protective array he had set up before, if he left for too long, the protective array could easily be eroded by the blood art. At that time, the fate of the women would be in danger. Just as Lu Yi decided to help Dao 13 out, he suddenly sensed something strange. He turned his head to look in a certain direction and saw a blood-red ray of light, like a rainbow piercing through the sun, rushing toward him. The light was dazzling, showing the fluctuations of a Cloud River tier cultivation base. The blood-red ray of light rushed into the chaotic battlefield and plunged into the blood river in the sky. Lu Yi's expression became strange. This was because he felt a trace of a familiar aura in the blood-red ray of light. It reminded him of someone. But this was too strange, and he did not dare to believe it. Suddenly, a few screams came from the blood river. Not only were the screams shrill, but they were also filled with fear, as if they had encountered something extremely terrifying. Then, the blood river collapsed, and Dao 13's angry figure charged out. There was also a slender figure with blood-red hair that danced in the wind. At this moment, she stretched out her hand, and sharp nails that were 2 to 3 meters long extended from her 5 fingers. The nails were as sharp as swords, and they pierced through the chests of a few True Lake Stage Blood Tribe cultivators, lifting them into the air. The True Lake Stage Blood Tribe cultivators' auras were visibly weakening. Bright blood flowed out of their wounds, but it did not drip down. Instead, it was absorbed by an unknown force. The fingernails that pierced through their chests were as red as blood. The woman's eyes were as bright as rubies, but if one looked closely, there was a golden color in her ruby-like eyes. One of the True Lake Stage Blood Tribe cultivators was terrified. Although his cultivation base was higher than the woman in front of him, he did not have the strength to resist. He could only beg, "Spare me." The woman ignored him. The Blood Tribe cultivators who were pierced by her nails could be seen with the naked eye. The bodies of the True Lake Stage Blood Tribe cultivators began to dry up as if their blood had been sucked out. The sudden change caused both sides to stop what they were doing. They looked at the woman who suddenly charged into the battlefield in shock. When they saw the golden light in the woman's eyes, their expressions changed drastically. They were terrified, as if they had seen something extremely frightening. In the silent battlefield, only Dao 13 was venting his anger by killing a few Blood Tribe cultivators. However, those Blood Tribe cultivators did not show any signs of fighting back. In the air, the woman's gaze swept across the battlefield. When she saw Lu Yi, who was standing at the edge of the battlefield, she stopped and smiled. Lu Yi was shocked. Just now, when the woman came from afar, he felt that her aura was slightly familiar. It reminded him of someone who should have been dead. However, he did not expect it to be this person. Although her body shape had changed greatly, she looked exactly like a Blood Tribe cultivator. She had the bloodline of a Blood Tribe cultivator. She had the characteristics of a Blood Tribe cultivator. Lan Qiue. More than a month ago, Lan Qiue went missing beside the blood pool. Lu Yi went down to search for her, but he did not find anything. A human woman with only a spirit stream stage cultivation base would not have a good ending if she fell into the blood pool. Therefore, Lu Yi was almost certain that Lan Qiue had met with misfortune. During this period of time, he often regretted and blamed himself. Who would have thought that Lan Qiue would return in such a manner and with such an appearance after just a month? Chapter 10:21. How did Lan Qiue become a member of the blood race? Did she originally have the bloodline of the blood race? That shouldn't be the case. The bloodline of the blood race was extremely powerful. The offspring of the blood race and the human race could only be the blood race. Therefore, in the blood refining world, no human would have the bloodline of the blood race. What surprised Lu Yi even more was that in just a month, Lan Qiue's cultivation had advanced from the Spirit Stream stage to the Cloud River stage. Moreover, she killed a True Lake stage blood race members like slaughtering chickens. A few True Lake stage blood race members were pierced through by her long fingernails. They didn't have the strength or courage to resist. An indescribable aura spread out from Lan Qiue's body. Although it wasn't strong, it was purer than the average blood race member. Feeling this pure aura and combining it with what he saw in front of him, a title suddenly popped up in Lu Ye's mind. Holy Seed. In the blood-refining world, the human race called the blood race the holy race. The blood race also called themselves that. However, within the blood race, there was an extremely special existence. That was the Holy Seed. The Holy Seed was a pure blood race member. The Holy Seed enjoyed an extremely high status within the blood race. The Holy Seed naturally suppressed the bloodline of ordinary blood race members. If in the eyes of the human race, ordinary blood race members were supreme, then in the eyes of the blood race, the Holy Seed was also supreme. Moreover, compared to ordinary blood race members, the Holy Seed had all sorts of inconceivable mysteries. Just like now, Lan Qiue's long fingernails pierced through the True Lake stage blood race members. In a short period of time, the blood race members in the True Lake stage were sucked dry, turning them into dried corpses. Lan Qiue casually swung her hand, and the dried corpses fell to the ground. Her long fingernails retracted, as if they had a life of their own. Her fingertips were blood-red and almost dripped fresh blood. The blood race liked to drink the blood of humans, but they would never drink the blood of their own race. This was a tradition and also an instinctive self-protection. This was because drinking the blood of their own race would cause the power in their body to become impure. On the other hand, consuming blood crystals wouldn't cause this side effect. Therefore, the blood race would only consume blood crystals. However, the Holy Seed had no taboos. The blood of humans was useful to the Holy Seed, and the blood of the blood kindred was also useful to the Holy Seed. In the eyes of the Holy Seed, all living creatures in the blood refinement realm could be turned into nutrients for its growth. In other words, the blood kindred who were high up in the blood refinement realm were also food for the Holy Seed. They could even enter the blood pool to cultivate at any time and place without having to worry about their lives. Therefore, the cultivation of the holy seeds increased very quickly because they did not have to worry about their own cultivation resources. Lan Qiu had an innate Dao body, and under the guidance of Lu Yi, she had broken through from the third-order spirit stream realm to the seventh order in just a month. Her progress could be described as fast, but compared to her current achievements, it was nothing. Because she was a holy seed, cultivating in the blood pool for a month had caused her strength to undergo an earth-shattering change. How did Lan Qiu become a holy seed? Lu Yi couldn't figure it out, but he knew that it must have something to do with her entering the blood river. In the blood refinement realm, the birth of a holy seed was closely related to the blood river. Some blood kindred were holy seeds when they were hatched, while others were transformed into holy seeds when they entered the blood pool to cleanse their bloodline. Lu Yi didn't know what the mystery was. Even the blood kindred themselves weren't clear about it. Because the number of holy seeds was too small, even in this huge blood refinement realm, most of the blood kindred had only heard of the holy seed and had never seen a real holy seed in their lives. Therefore, when a holy seed suddenly broke into this battlefield, whether it was the blood kindred of thousand flowing blessed land or the allied forces of the three forces, all of them stopped what they were doing. Under the unique bloodline suppression of the holy seed, every blood kindred was terrified. The blood in their bodies was boiling, and they had the illusion that they were witnessing a god, making them want to worship. Humph. A soft sound came from Lan Qiu's nose. This time, many of the blood kindred couldn't take it anymore. No matter if they were on the ground or in the air, they all knelt on one knee and performed the blood kindred's greeting. Every blood kindred lowered their once arrogant heads and even lowered their eyes. This was the bloodline suppression of the holy seed. Although Lan Qiue's current strength wasn't much, and any true lake stage blood kindred was stronger than her, under the natural bloodline suppression, no blood kindred dared to be presumptuous in front of her. Her figure flashed and landed in front of Lu Yi. She withdrew all of her aura and was about to speak, but Lu Yi raised a finger and gestured to her. Lan Qiu understood, and nodded her head. A fierce battle had ended because of Lan Qiue's arrival. Many of the blood breeds were in a state of panic. Before Lan Qiue spoke, none of them dared to stand up. They all half knelt there with their heads lowered. Lu Yi kept the sword gored and walked towards the depths of the blessed land. Lan Qiue followed closely behind. This wasn't the place to talk. Dao Shirsen looked left and right for a while. Seeing that there were no opponents left, he was still annoyed. He was trapped in the river of blood just now. Now that he was free, he wanted to kill some blood kindred to vent his anger. In the end, he ended up like this. He felt suffocated and had nowhere to vent his anger. In the backyard of the blessed land, where Lu Yi lived, he stood still and turned to look at Lan Qiue, who followed him. There were many things that he wanted to understand, but the most important thing was to confirm Lan Qiue's position. Now that she had become a holy seed, could she still remember that she was once a human? Lan Qiue suddenly stretched out her hand and gestured above Lu Ye's head. She moved it to her chest and smiled mischievously. "Senior, you've become shorter." Lu Ye's heart was at ease. Lan Qiue was still Lan Qiue. However, becoming a holy seed had undoubtedly affected Lan Qiue's temperament. In the past, Lan Qiue would never do such a thing in front of him. The current Lan Qiue was undoubtedly more confident than before. "It's you who became taller." Lu Yi looked at her speechlessly. The blood kindred had this disadvantage. They were generally taller than humans. This was why Lu Yi had never thought of using Thousand Face to disguise himself as a blood kindred. The external characteristics of the blood kindred were not something that Thousand Face could disguise. Hee. Lan Qiue laughed happily. In the past, she had always looked up to Lu Yi. Now that the situation was reversed, she could not help but feel proud. "I went down to look for you, but I couldn't find you. I thought you were dead." I was swept away by the undercurrent of the blood pool. I don't know where I went. Of course, you couldn't find me. Senior, you don't have to blame yourself. I'm much better than before. What happened? Lu Yi asked. Lan Qiue sank into her memories. After a while, she shook her head. To be honest, I don't know what happened. At that time, I thought I was going to die, but somehow I caught a ball of golden light. After that, I was in a daze. When I woke up, I was already like this. Golden light? It should be something from the blood river. But when I woke up, I searched for it, but I couldn't find any golden light. This was a strange thing. It seemed that the birth of the holy seed was directly related to the mysterious golden light in the blood river. It was just that they did not know what kind of existence the golden light was. I woke up 2 days ago. After leaving the blood river, I went to the Bright Moon Cave abode. But there was no one there. I didn't know how to find you, so I wandered around. Then, I came to this area. What happened next was clear. The battle here was intense. Lan Qiue sensed something and came to check on the situation. In the end, she found Lu Ye's trace by accident. It was an unexpected gain. It's good that you're fine. The self-reproach that had been plaguing him for the past month had finally dissipated. It's just that you're now a holy seed. I'm afraid you can't restore your human body. This is good. I don't have to be on tenterhooks every day. Lan Qiue was open-minded. Although her appearance had changed greatly and did not conform to the original aesthetic of the human race, she had experienced too many hardships as a human. She did not mind changing her way of living. She softly snorted. They should be the ones on tenterhooks now. Senior brother, how do you plan to deal with those people outside? When she asked this, Lan Qiue was full of murderous intent. How do you want to deal with them? Lu Yi asked. Lan Qiue said, of course I want to kill them all. She did not hesitate to kill the blood breeds. Which of those blood breeds did not have a life under their hands? They saw the human race as livestock in captivity. Naturally, their deaths were not regrettable. Moreover, she could even get rid of the blood fetus that she gave birth to. When she followed Lu Yi, she had dealt with several blood fetus. She had a ruthless determination in her bones. As long as Lu Yi said the word good, she would definitely kill all the blood breeds outside without batting an eyelid. She did not even need to do it herself. She only needed to activate the power of her holy seed, and those blood breeds would not be able to do anything in front of her. Perhaps the blood breeds in the spirit ocean realm could resist the suppression of her bloodline. However, the blood breeds in the true lake realm did not have this ability. The sternness on his face disappeared and was replaced by a smile. But I know what senior brother wants to do, so killing them won't work. I'll just leave them alive. The sudden change in attitude saved the lives of many of the Blood Clan members outside. She looked at Lu Yi seriously with a sincere expression. Senior brother, I will help you in the future. Okay? Lu Yi nodded seriously. Then senior brother, please rest for a while. I will deal with the rest outside. Lan Qiyu said and left in a flash. Even after she returned, the vampires outside were still half kneeling on the ground. Not a single one of them dared to act rashly. All of them were sweating profusely and had terrified expressions on their faces. No one knew what kind of fate awaited them. Lan Qiyue's slender figure stood in midair. She looked down and said in a cold voice, "From now on, I will be the master of this place." Until this sentence was heard, the blood breeds felt as if they had been pardoned. They shouted, "We are willing to serve the Holy Master." Those with the holy seed, regardless of their cultivation level, were all holy masters in the blood refining world. This was a special honor and also the highest respect the blood breeds had for the holy seed. Chapter 10:22. The blood race from both sides suffered many casualties in the war, but those who survived were all elites. Lan Qiyu came forward and reorganized them. No blood race dared to object, and they all obeyed her orders. To the blood race, being able to serve under the Saint Seed was something they dreamed of. The territory of Qianlu Blessed Land expanded again, and the range of protection naturally increased. After Lan Qiyu took over, the first thing she announced was that from today onwards, the blood race under her command were not to harm the lives of humans in any way. Although Yu Lingfeng had announced this before, the effect was completely different. When Yu Lingfeng announced this matter, although the blood breeds agreed verbally, they didn't take it seriously. Which blood race in this world did not consume blood? Some blood race even made up their minds to secretly consume blood. Anyway, as long as they were not caught on the spot, it would be fine. But this order came from the mouth of a saint seed, so no blood race dared to disobey. Every now and then, pregnant human women were sent to Qianlu Blessed Land to settle down. Lan Qiyu was in charge of this before. Now that her cultivation had increased greatly, it was easier for her to handle this. She also selected a few Gu human females and trained them as helpers. In this way, the pregnant mothers of the human race would be well taken care of. After they gave birth to the blood fetus, they would be sent to the nearby villages to settle down. Lu Yi did not need to worry about these trivial matters anymore. He only needed to cultivate. Time flew by and another month passed. In the backyard of Qianlu Blessed Land, in Lu Ye's bedroom, waves of qi swept through his body, and the surging spirit energy in his body was obviously pure. True Lake 8th Order. Thinking back to when he cultivated in the nameless sealed world with the help of the Earth Vein, he advanced from True Lake 5th Order to 7th Order in 2 months. But it had been more than 3 months since he came to the blood refining world, and his cultivation had only advanced by 1 level. Of course, in these 3 months, he only used 2 months to cultivate. In the first month, he had been restoring his original cultivation, so it did not count. His cultivation did not improve quickly, at least compared to before, it was slow. However, compared to other human cultivators, this cultivation efficiency was still terrifying. This was mainly due to the talent tree. With the help of the talent tree, Lu Yi could quickly absorb the energy of spirit stones and spirit pills for his own use. This was something that no other human cultivator could compare to. The spirit stones and spirit pills that he carried with him were almost used up. The only resources he had left for cultivation were some blood crystals. There were quite a few of them, but not too many either. The source of the blood crystals was Lan Shiyue's external expansion. During this month, she led the vampires in Thousand Flow Blessed Land to attack the nearby vampires' territories. Now, the territory under Thousand Flow Blessed Land's jurisdiction was twice as large as it was a month ago. All the humans under their jurisdiction were protected. Lan Shiyue's cultivation progress was extremely fast. Almost every time she returned from a battle, Lu Yi could feel that her cultivation had improved. Dao Shisan's cultivation had also improved. Of course, he was only slowly recovering his original cultivation. The current Dao 13 was already at the 9th Order True Lake Realm. He was only one step away from the Spirit Sea Realm. Dao 13's recovery was slower, but it couldn't be helped. After all, he couldn't absorb the energy of the blood crystals without restraint like Lu Yi. What he had been doing the most recently was eating non-stop. He ate the flesh and blood of the demonic beasts in this world. With the Spirit Sea Realm physique, his appetite was naturally huge. He would eat 3 to 5 demonic beasts almost every day. Fortunately, there were specialized vampires in charge of capturing monster beasts for him, so Lu Yi didn't have to worry about anything. It would take some time. In the blink of an eye, another 2 months had passed. It had been more than 5 months since Lu Yi came to the blood refining world. Dao 13's cultivation had finally fully recovered. Lu Yi knew that it was time to leave. Over the past 5 months, he had been thinking about the purpose of the 9 continents Tianji sending him to this world, but he couldn't figure it out. The only thing he was sure of was that it had something to do with the humans of this world. Looking at the various sealed worlds that Lu Yi had experienced, everything he did was closely related to the fate and future of the humans in those sealed worlds. It was the same for the Myriad Beast Realm, the Soaring Dragon Realm, and the Peerless Continent. He once wondered if the 9 continents wanted him to save the humans of the blood refining world. But if that was the case, then the 9 continents had overestimated him. In the end, he was only a true lake realm cultivator. Even with Dao 13 as his helper, he wouldn't be able to do much in a big world like the blood refining world. Even with Lan Shiyue, it wouldn't be enough. He couldn't bear the heavy responsibility of saving the humans of the blood refining world unless he had the ability to destroy all the vampires in this world. Since the 9 continents didn't want him to save the humans of the blood refining world, then why did the 9 continents send him here? Lu Yi had to find the answer, so he had to leave Thousand Flows Blessed Land. He wouldn't be able to find any clues if he stayed here. The reason why he waited until today was to wait for Dao 13 to recover his cultivation. Dao 13 was the greatest helper the 9 continents had given him. Only when Dao 13 fully recovered his cultivation could he proceed with the next step of his plan. As for Lan Shiyue, if he kept her here, she would be able to protect more humans. Therefore, he couldn't bring Lan Shiyue away. Otherwise, it would be much safer to bring a saint seed of the vampires around the blood refining world. With a plan in mind, Lu Yi waited silently. Since he was going to leave, he naturally had to bid farewell to Lan Shiyue. One day later, Lan Shiyue, who had been fighting outside, returned. The first thing she did was to go to Lu Yi's bedroom to report the situation of the battle. She told Lu Yi how many blood breeds had died in this trip. Her excitement was beyond words. The dead vampires naturally included her subordinates. However, she was the same as Lu Yi. She didn't feel sorry for the deaths of her subordinates. To her, every dead vampires was an additional blood crystal. Of course, in order to preserve the strength of her subordinates, she couldn't kill too many vampires. Therefore, every time she went on an expedition, she would control the number of vampires' casualties. When the time was right, she would activate her Saint Seed bloodline and turn the tide. Senior Apprentice Brother, these are the blood crystals we obtained during this trip. There are a few hundred of them. Lan Shiyue said as she handed a storage bag to Lu Yi. She naturally knew that Lu Yi could use the blood crystals to cultivate. However, she didn't know why Lu Yi had such a strange ability and never asked. You can keep them for yourself. There's no need to give them to me. Lu Yi declined. It's too easy for me to cultivate. I don't need the blood crystals. Therefore, it's more appropriate for Senior Apprentice Brother to use these things. It was indeed easy for her to cultivate. The vampires she killed during the expedition were all turned into nutrients for her growth. Moreover, she could enter the blood river anytime to improve herself. Then I'll take them. Lu Yi took the storage bag. He didn't have many cultivation resources left. Although a few hundred blood crystals weren't much, they could replenish some. After a pause, he said, "Junior apprentice sister, I have something to tell you." Lan Qiue was startled. Then, her expression changed. She quickly stood up. "I'm not listening. Senior apprentice brother, don't say it." "I haven't said what it is." Lu Yi was speechless. "I'm not listening." Lan Qiue was a little annoyed. She stomped her foot and turned into a blood light that shot into the sky. In a flash, she disappeared. She was very smart. It was obvious that she realized something. Looking at the direction she left, Lu Yi was speechless. At the side, Dao Shisan was eating a large piece of beast meat. His mouth was full of oil and his stomach was bulging. He was carefree. Suddenly, a scream came from the front yard. It was unknown which vampires were unlucky enough to meet Lan Qiue, who was in a bad mood. They were killed by her. The next day, Lu Yi was meditating and cultivating when he heard footsteps. He opened his eyes and saw that it was Lan Qiue. Lu Yi smiled at her and gestured for her to sit down. Lan Qiue turned her head and stood there without saying a word. After a while, she said, "Senior apprentice brother, are you leaving?" Lu Yi nodded slightly. "Yes." Lan Qiue turned to look at him. There was a hint of pleading in her eyes. "Can you not leave? If you leave, I'll be the only one here. There are some things that I have to go out and take a look." "Then go." Lan Qiue was annoyed. "Senior apprentice brother, if you leave today, I'll kill all the humans in my territory tomorrow. I'll go and kill those pregnant mothers right now." Lu Yi laughed. "Don't say things out of anger." Lan Qiue glared at him. "I can do it." "Maybe you can do it, but you're a human after all. You were once one of those pregnant mothers. If you really do it, you'll suffer in the future." "So what?" Lan Qiue looked at him stubbornly. However, she only looked at Lu Yi for 3 breaths before averting her gaze. "Come and sit down." Lu Yi waved his hand. Lan Qiue moved and sat in front of him. After a while, she said, "Senior apprentice brother, take me with you. I'm a holy seed. I can protect you by your side." Lu Yi sighed. "If you leave, Qianlu blessed land will be in chaos. Those humans, what does their life and death have to do with me?" Lan Qiue suddenly became agitated. "I was supposed to die. Senior apprentice brother saved me, taught me cultivation, and brought me to the blood pool. If it weren't for senior apprentice brother, there would be no Lan Qiue in this world. Senior apprentice brother, don't forget that I was originally an ordinary human. I don't want to be a holy seed, nor do I want to be a blessed land. I don't ask for anything else. I just want to follow senior apprentice brother. You can just treat me as a servant girl." Lu Yi was silent. He suddenly realized that he had taken things for granted. Before becoming a holy seed, Lan Qiue was just a human girl who was bullied by the blood breeds. It was just that her current identity as a holy seed made Lu Yi forget the Lan Qiue of the past. "If I let the holy seed be a servant girl for me, my finger will rise," Lu Yi said slowly. "If it's only 5, then come with me." Lan Qiue looked at Lu Yi in surprise. "Really?" Lu Yi nodded. "Of course. But if we all leave, what will happen to the humans in the blessed land? I'll try my best to make arrangements. Perhaps there was no way to maintain the current situation in the blessed land for too long, but he could only do his best." Chapter 10:23. Lan Qiue smiled. "Then I won't go." She was still making a fuss about wanting to go with him. Why didn't she go after agreeing to it? "I really won't go." Lan Qiue was still smiling. "Senior apprentice brother is right. I was once one of those pregnant mothers and suffered a lot. Now that I have the ability to change some things, I can't sit back and do nothing. I'll stay here and continue to expand my territory. I'll protect as many humans as I can. Lu Yi was slightly enlightened. Only then did he realize something. Lan Qiue didn't have to go with Bai Ji. She just wanted him to declare that he was willing to take her with him. Once this was satisfied, it didn't matter whether she went with him or not. But senior apprentice brother, wait for me for 3 days. No, 5 days. You can leave after 5 days. Lan Qiue said. She was also here. Okay. Lu Yi nodded. He didn't ask what she wanted to do. Lan Qiue left quickly. Lu Yi sensed that she had left Ganlu blessed land. He didn't know where she was going. 5 days passed quickly. Lan Qiue returned as promised. Looking at her travel-worn appearance, it was obvious that she had rushed a long way. Senior apprentice brother. Lan Qiue took out something from her chest and opened it in front of Lu Yi. This is a rough map of this world. Lu Yi's eyes lit up. He had thought of getting a map of this world, but this kind of thing was hard to come by. He had no way to get it. He didn't know where Lan Qiue found it. Wu Bai's trip this time was probably related to this. He lowered his head to look at the map. He saw a block pattern in the shape of a drop. It was similar to the one he saw when he entered this world. Lan Qiue pointed at the top of the map. This is where we are. Senior apprentice brother, when you leave here, remember to go south. Why go south? Lu Yi didn't understand. Lan Qiue pursed her red lips. She hesitated for a moment. Finally, she said, because there's a human force in the south. They have the power to fight against the blood race. Senior apprentice brother, you can only be safe there. Lu Yi's heart was slightly red. Are you sure? Lan Qiue said seriously. I heard about this from the blood breeds more than a month ago. She smiled mischievously, but the blood breeds who told me about this have already been killed by me. She obviously didn't want Lu Yi to know about these things, lest Lu Yi get any ideas. She had long felt that it was impossible for Lu Yi to stay here forever. So when Lu Yi said that he had something to tell her a few days ago, she turned around. She tried to persuade him to stay, but to no avail, hence she knew that Lu Yi had left. Since that was the case, there was no need to continue concealing the information about Steward. At the very least, she could give Lu Yi a clear goal and direction so that he wouldn't have to run around aimlessly in the blood-refining world. Lu Yi stared at the map in front of him in a daze, his mood surging. This was the best news he had heard since coming to the blood-refining world 5 months ago. He had seen too much of the suffering of the human race during this period of time. He had thought that the humans of the blood realm were living in an abyss of suffering and that this realm was completely ruled by the vampires. Not until then did he realize that there was still a new flame of humanity in the darkness. The 5 months of confusion suddenly disappeared at this moment. Where is it? Lu Yi asked. Lan Qiue's slender red finger moved downwards. Senior brother is heading south, crossing the sky-upholding peak and the royal line. These 2 peaks are the 2 highest pressures in the blood-refining world. You still have to continue heading south. After a while, Lan Qiue's finger pointed to a position on the map. Spirit Net Sea. That human race power is in the Spirit Gate Sea. Lu Yi's gaze swept past the sky-upholding peak and Jade Pillar Peak before looking at the Spirit Gate Sea. He couldn't help but have a strange feeling. The shape of the entire blood-refining world. Why does it look like something? The thought flashed past, but he didn't think too much about it. The vampires in the south and the humans in the Spirit Gate Sea are at war all year round. Hence, senior brother must be careful when you go there. I understand. Lu Yi nodded slightly and reached out to pick up the map. He stared at Xianghai and stretched out his hand slightly. Suddenly, he raised his head and looked at Lan Qiue. What are you doing? Lan Qiue had used her finger to make a cut on her Lu's deer. The cut moved, but the blood didn't flow out. What was strange was that her blood wasn't golden. Lan Qiue stretched out her finger and pulled at the wound. Soon, a round jade the size of a copper coin was taken out. The jade's body was shining with golden light. It was as if it had drunk Lan Qiue's sacred blood. After the round jade was taken out, the flesh on Lan Qiue's arm moved. It healed very quickly. This was the uniqueness of the vampires. They were proficient in all kinds of blood arts. Hence, ordinary flesh wounds were nothing to them. They could recover very quickly. Not to mention, Lan Qiue was a sacred seed. Her recovery ability was even stronger than ordinary vampires. After taking out the round jade, Lan Qiue's aura had obviously weakened by a lot. I prepared this 2 months ago. I thought that senior brother would be able to stay for a while longer. Now that senior brother is leaving, I can only take it out. This sacred blood jade contains my aura. It can deter some ordinary vampires. However, because it is limited by my cultivation, its deterrence effect on vampires above the Spirit Sea realm is greatly reduced. Senior brother, please use it regularly. As she said this, she handed the sacred blood jade that was nourished by her sacred blood to Lu Yi. Lu Yi only felt that his hand was heavy. Something prepared 2 months ago. Obviously, Lan Qiue had always been mentally prepared that Lu Yi would leave at any time. Otherwise, she would not have prepared such a thing for him. This also showed that Lan Qiue had never planned to leave with him. She knew that Lu Yi was worried about her. Hence, she had to stay and protect the Pando humans in the area under her jurisdiction as a sacred seed. Senior brother, you must take care of yourself, Lan Qiue finally exhorted. Lu Yi took the lead. 2 hours later, in the sky above Qianlu Blessed Land, Lan Qiue stood in midair and watched Lu Yi leave. Since she had decided to leave, she would not drag it on. There was no water in the world that was not green. He vaguely felt that the sleepiness was something that happened a few months ago. He could find the answer there. Other than Dao Shisan, only Yu Lingfeng followed him on this trip. In an environment like the blood-refining world, there were many inconveniences for the two of them to enter the clan alone. Bringing Yu Lingfeng along would be a cover. If they encountered other vampires, they would only subconsciously think that they were Yu Lingfeng's blood slaves. But in reality, who was the slave and who was the master? Each person's heart was clear. Lu Yi took out the spirit boat and had Dao Shisan drive it. When they passed by the vicinity of Songnan village, Lu Yi thought for a moment and let Dao Shisan take a detour. They stopped outside Songnan village for a moment. Under the perception of his divine telekinesis, the villagers of Songnan village were undoubtedly more smiling than when he first arrived a few months ago. They no longer had that kind of brilliant expression. In the past few months, ever since Zhang Zhulai in the Bright Moon Cave abode announced that they would no longer consume blood, no more humans were harmed by the vampires. Now, Songnan village only needed to contribute a certain amount of blood within a certain period of time. This was something that couldn't be helped. The blood race had a deep-rooted desire for blood. Not allowing them to drink living blood was already an extreme measure. If they didn't even allow them to drink dead blood, who knew what kind of chaos would ensue? Even Lan Qiue, the sacred seed, did not think of changing this point. The main thing was that it could not be changed. After observing for a moment outside Songnan village, the group set off again. Dao Shisan drove the spirit boat. Its speed was still very fast. In just one day, they were out of Qianlu Blessed Land's jurisdiction. This time, Lu Yi was not in a hurry to go south. After all, the journey was long, and there was no point in being anxious. He was currently in the northern region of the blood-refining realm. The Godly Gate Sea was in the southern region of the blood-refining realm. If he wanted to reach the Godly Gate Sea, it was equivalent to crossing over half of the blood-refining realm's territory. Even with Dao Shisan driving the spirit boat, it was not something that could be done in a few days. Lu Yi estimated that this journey would take at least a few months. Moreover, he was not just rushing. Along the way, he would occasionally encounter vampires. He would casually kill them. For the current Lu Yi, the blood crystals of the vampires were the only cultivation resources that he could obtain. Naturally, he would not let them go. Previously, when he was in Qianlu Blessed Land, he wanted to find an earth vein to cultivate. After all, If he could find an earth vein where spiritual energy gathered, his cultivation level would increase rapidly. However, after searching for a long time, he did not find anything. In the end, he came to a helpless conclusion. The blood river was the earth vein of the blood refining realm. Although it could be found everywhere, it could not be refined at will. It was a pity. 5 days after leaving Qianlu Blessed Land's jurisdiction, the group arrived at another blessed land. Yuling Feng took the lead. Lu Yi and Dao Shisan followed closely behind, pretending to be blood slaves. Before they got close to the blessed land, a patrolling vampire stopped them and asked, "Where are you from? What are you doing here?" Yuling Feng followed Lu Ye's instructions and said, "We have no home to return to. We are here to seek refuge." The vampires looked at Yuling Feng suspiciously. Seeing that he did not seem to be faking it, the vampire said, "Wait here." They turned around and went in to report. After a while, vampires with a higher cultivation level came out to greet them. After exchanging a few words with Yuling Feng, they happily let him in. After a while, in the meeting hall of this blessed land, the true Lake Realm vampires with some status gathered together and sat on the left and right sides. The foundation of this blessed land was not bad. It was much stronger than the Qianlu blessed land. The one sitting at the head of the table was naturally the blessed land's lord. The vampires frequently fought with each other. There were always some defeated vampires who had nowhere to go and could only choose to seek refuge. Therefore, the vampires present did not doubt Yuling Feng's words at all. They all thought that he was really here to seek refuge. Moreover, Yuling Feng showed that he was a true Lake Realm 8th Order cultivator. They could not underestimate him. If there was one more vampires in the blessed land, their foundation would increase. Basically, the vampires here welcomed Yuling Feng's arrival. Chapter 10:24. However, after a short while, the hall was filled with corpses and blood. Lu Yi sat on the throne of the blessed land's lord, playing with the sacred blood jade that Lan Shiyue gave him before he left. Yuling Feng stood respectfully at the side, trembling. With Lu Yi and Dao Shisan's abilities, it wouldn't be difficult to kill all the bloodlights here, but it definitely wouldn't be this easy. After all, they were all true Lake Stage blood race cultivators. If their lives were in danger, they would definitely put up a fight. However, it was different with the sacred blood jade's suppression. When Lu Yi took out the sacred blood jade, all the blood race cultivators present stiffened as if they were struck by lightning. Lu Yi and Dao Shisan attacked violently, slaughtering all the blood race cultivators present. The blessed land's lord was still alive, but he was captured by Dao Shisan and knelt in front of Lu Yi. Lu Yi raised his hand and touched the blessed land's forehead, urging him with his spiritual will. After a while, Dao Shisan let go of the other party, and Lu Yi put away the holy blood jade. The blessed lord of the blood clan, who had been planted with the soul control spell, stood up respectfully. Lu Yi gave a few simple instructions before leaving with Dao Shisan and Yuling Feng. He didn't kill the blessed land's lord out of mercy, but because he needed him to live on and continue to rule this blessed land. He wanted to provide as much protection as possible for the humans in this blessed land. Along the way, Lu Yi would kill a group of blood race cultivators for blood crystals every time he passed by a blessed land. He would leave the blessed land's lord alive and plant the soul manipulation divine rune. In fact, if possible, Lu Yi would like to plant the soul manipulation divine rune in the minds of blood race cultivators of the divine ocean stage. In the blood refining world, the places where blood race cultivators gathered were divided into 3 levels. The lowest level was the abode, guarded by blood race cultivators of the Cloud River stage. The next level was the grotto heaven, guarded by blood race cultivators of the divine ocean stage. The abode's lord was called the abode's lord, the blessed land's lord was the blessed land's lord, and the grotto heaven's lord was the heavenly venerate. If one could control a heavenly venerate, it would be very effective. It wasn't something a mere blessed land's lord could compare to. However, Even with the sacred blood jade in hand, Luyi didn't dare to enter a grotto heaven with a blood clan member at the Divine Sea Realm. There were too many variables. A blood clan member at the Divine Sea Realm was not easy to control. He had been lucky to successfully plant the soul control spell in Dao Shirsan's divine soul. Dao Shirsan had fainted, and Mo Wuji had used the deity vanquishing sword to break Dao Shirsan's divine soul defense. Thus, even though Lu Yi knew the benefits of controlling a heavenly venerable level blood tribe member, he didn't act rashly. Continuing south, Lu Yi planted the soul manipulation divine runes in almost every blessed land he passed, and they all received his orders. Xing Jin reached the peak of a mountain. The cold wind was biting, penetrating one's bones. As far as the eye could see, clouds and mist were rising, and waves of smoke were faintly discernible, as if they were no longer in the mortal world. Towering Sky Peak was one of the 2 tallest mountain peaks in the blood-refining realm. It was marked on the map that Lan Qiue gave to Lu Yi. The other mountain peak was Jade Pillar Peak. It was said that these 2 mountains were of the same height, and if one looked down from the sky, one would see that they were both semicircular in shape, symmetrical on the left and right sides of the blood-refining realm. It was really strange. Lu Yi didn't know whether they were of the same height or symmetrical on the left and right sides, and he didn't have the mood to investigate. After all, he couldn't go to Jade Pillar Peak to make a comparison. He was just passing by. It had been almost 2 months since they set off from Ganlu Blessed Land. According to the map, they had only covered 30% of the journey. In other words, they still had to walk for at least 4 months to reach the Shun KC. The road ahead was really long. They didn't stay here for long. Soon they set off again. They passed towering Sky Peak and entered the vast Cloud Radish Plain. From the map, the Cloud Radish Plain was extremely large, occupying almost half of the blood-refining realm's territory. The Shun Sea was located in the middle of the Cloud Radish Plain. It was an inland sea. A few days later, in a blessed land where the blood race gathered, many corpses of the blood race were strewn across the hall. Yuling Feng silently collected the blood crystals of the dead blood race. Lu Yi sat on the throne of a blessing lord, playing with the sacred blood jade in his hand. The blessing lord knelt in front of him, listening to Lu Ye's instructions and nodding his head repeatedly. They had done this so many times that the 3 of them were familiar with it. Almost every blessed land they went to would have a similar scene. After giving his instructions, Lu Yi got up and was about to leave. Unexpectedly, the blessing lord who had been implanted with the soul manipulation divine runes suddenly said, "Sacred envoy, please wait." He didn't know Lu Ye's background, but when he saw the round jade with the sacred blood seed in Lu Ye's hand, he thought that Lu Yi was a subordinate of a sacred seed, so he subconsciously called him Sacred Envoy. As for why the Sacred Venerable chose a human as a Sacred Envoy, it wasn't something he needed to consider. "What is it?" Lu Yi tilted his head and looked at him. The blood race member said, "Sacred Envoy, may I ask if the Sacred Venerable is willing to subdue more blessing lords?" Lu Yi narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" The blood race member said, "It's like this. Not long ago, the blessing lord of the Yellow Dome blessed land reached the divine sea level, so he invited all the blessing lords to gather and prepare to hold a blood feast ceremony. When the time comes, many blessing lords will come to support." Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. In the past 2 months, he had used the soul manipulation divine rune to enslave many blood race members, but the efficiency was still low. However, this was just something he did along the way, so he didn't demand anything. Now that there was an opportunity for so many blessing lords to gather, he could go and join in the fun. The reason that he hadn't rashly gone looking for trouble with an Empyrean-level blood race was because there were far too many uncertainties. Before his cultivation truly stepped into the Divine Sea Realm, rashly attacking a Divine Sea Realm blood race was far too risky. However, if it was just a blood race member who had just reached the Divine Sea level, then it was completely possible to take him down. Not to mention that many blessing lords would come to support him. It could be said that what he gained from participating in this blood-feeding ceremony might be more than what he had gained in the past 2 months. Spending a few days to protect more humans was totally worth it. You were invited? Lu Yi asked. The Blood Race member said, "The one in Remnant Sky Blessed Land has some friendship with me." Very good. Lu Yi nodded in satisfaction. What's your name? The Blood Race member hurriedly replied, Jinda. Because I have a friendship with the one in Huangqiong Blessed Land. Therefore, Jinda originally planned to set off today, but he didn't expect Lu Yi to come to him. As a result, almost all of his true Lake Realm subordinates were dead, and he was the only one left. There was nothing to prepare. After a while, Jinda led Lu Yi and the others away. Huangqiong Blessed Land wasn't too far from here, but it wasn't close either. It was a day's journey. On the second day, the group arrived at Huangqiong Blessed Land. Looking from afar, Huangqiong Blessed Land was full of jubilation. Many Blood Race members were shuttling back and forth in the Blessed Land, setting up all kinds of things for the ceremony. Because it wasn't the day of the ceremony yet, the guests hadn't arrived yet. When Jinda led Lu Yi and the others down, a Blood Race member who recognized him immediately came up to greet him with a smile. Brother Jinda, why are you here so early? There are still 2 days before the ceremony. Jinda said, Brother, when ascending to the divine ocean realm is a joyous occasion. How can I be late? I also want to see if there's anything I can help with. The master of Huangqiong Blessed Land was called Wen Yufeng, and he was younger than Jinda. The Blood Race member smiled. Brother Jinda is considerate. He then reminded, but Brother Jinda should call him Heavenly Venerable. Jinda was startled, and then he laughed. Yes, Heavenly Venerable One. Although they have a friendship, the Divine Ocean Realm and the True Lake Realm have different statuses. It would be inappropriate to call him Brother Wen now. While the 2 Blood Race members were talking, Lu Ye's gaze fell on the many panic-stricken humans locked up in prison. Without exception, all of them had cultivation, and they were all human girls around 16 or 17 years old. There were quite a few of them, about 300 to 400. It was obvious that Huangqiong Blessed Land had put in a lot of effort to collect so many young girls with cultivation. These girls should be the food prepared for the blood feast ceremony. Once the ceremony started, the Blood Race members who came to congratulate Huangqiong would enjoy them to their heart's content. Lu Yi was secretly glad that Jinda had mentioned it before. Otherwise, he would have missed the ceremony, and these girls would have to face an extremely tragic fate. At the same time, he felt a little sad. What he could see and intervene in was something he could do. In this vast blood refinement realm, how many things could he not see and control? These 2 humans are... The Blood Race member looked at Lu Yi and Dao Shi-san curiously. Dao Shi-san, in particular, had a sturdy figure and abundant blood essence, which attracted the Blood Race's attention the most. Back then, Sun Miaozhu had taken a liking to him. The 2 blood slaves that he brought as gifts had high cultivations. The Blood Race member understood and immediately smiled. Brother Jinda is considerate. If Heavenly Venerable knew, he would be happy. Where is Heavenly Venerables? Jinda asked. I will send them to Heavenly Venerable now. He is meditating in his bedroom, preparing for the ceremony in 2 days. The Blood Race member gestured with his hand. Brother Jinda, follow me. Logically speaking, it was not good to disturb Heavenly Venerable at this time. However, since Jinda wanted to send gifts, he could not stop him. Therefore, he followed the Blood Race member and headed to the backyard of the Blessed Land. Soon, they arrived in front of a bedroom. The Blood Race member went in to report. After getting Wen Yufeng's permission, he came out and said, Heavenly Venerable invites you in. Thank you. Jinda nodded slightly and led Lu Yi and Dao Shi-san into the bedroom. They walked in. At first glance, they saw a Blood Race member sitting cross-legged. It was the master of Huangqiong Blessed Land, Wen Yufeng. Now that he had reached the Divine Sea Realm, Huangqiong Blessed Land would also rise and become a Huangqiong Grotto Heaven. As for whether Huangqiong Blessed Land could stand firm, it would depend on Wen Yufeng's ability. This was also the reason why he held the Blood Feast ceremony. He wanted to use this ceremony to win the hearts of the masters of the blessed lands nearby. Otherwise, he would not have spent so much effort to prepare so many high-quality blood feasts. Greetings, Heavenly Venerable. Jinda stepped forward and bowed. Wen Yufeng opened his eyes and said with a smile, Brother Jinda, there is no need to be so polite. You and I have known each other for many years. Although I reached the Divine Sea Realm earlier than you, there will be a day when you will reach the same level. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.